Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a particularly squamous and gibbous edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party!
Monster Party! Oh, Monster Party! The elder gods of Monster Party.
That's right. Oh, speaking of elder gods, who are
underline
you,
the
sir?
elder.
I said gods.
Yes. Well, it fits both ways.
Well,
But
who are
as you were
sir?
about to introduce me, I am Matt Weinhold.
I am SHAWN Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James GONIS.
And for this episode, this is one that we've talked about doing for a long time.
Oh, a long time.
Yes. It's a big subject. It is one that is very near and dear to my heart because I love this topic.
Yes, me too.
Mhm.
The topic is
What is this topic?
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft. As in
H.P. Lovecraft.
Howard Phillips Lovecraft.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And his
Very-
whole legacy.
His whole legacy, his stories, the movies that used his work as a jumping off point,
The mythos.
the mythos, the other writers that came in and expanded on some of the creatures and the storylines that he created.
Yeah,
The
he's a very
influence.
yes, and he's a very unusual person.
Well, yes, he's a very complicated man and in a lot of ways a very tragic figure.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes.
And I learned quite a bit about this man from watching a documentary that was made by our guest. And Larry,
Oh.
if you could introduce our guest for us.
Yes, I have to tell you, this I am overwhelmed by having this guest with us. I'm so thrilled and honored. Tonight's actually return guest.
That's right.
And if you recall our guest tonight, he was on our dinosaurs episode.
Yes, he
some
was.
time ago. He is an award-winning producer, writer, director with over 30 years of experience in the entertainment industry. I mean, look, this guy, he has done everything. Some of his award-winning documentaries include such films as Men in Suits, The Splat Pack, A Life in Film, and this documentary that you were talking about, Lovecraft, Fear of the Unknown. It's absolutely amazing. He's a fellow fan of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, and he has his own podcast called Film Sense. Guys, will you please put your hands together and welcome back to the show, Frank Woodward.
Oh my God! Thank you, guys.
Welcome.
I'm thankfully we're recording this because my mother needs to hear that build-up. That's fantastic.
Frank,
Oh my
no, seriously,
God.
man, you have
We love
done,
you.
You've
Hey, I
done
love you guys.
so much, and you have made some amazing documentaries. But this
thank
one, Lovecraft, Fear of the Unknown, was just mind-boggling. I mean,
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. It's the one that haunts me to this day.
How so?
It's funny. I guess I'm giving this as a little bit of a disclaimer. I made that documentary. I always saw it as kind of a Lovecraft 101 primer for people who didn't know anything about the guy.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But when I do interviews about Lovecraft, which I've done various times since I made the film, which was in 2008, so that was a
Yeah.
while ago now.
Yeah.
People assume I just know everything, and I don't.
Yeah.
That's St. Joshi's or Leslie Klinger's territory now. I have to watch my own documentary sometimes to remind myself. Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, it's funny too. It's funny you should say that because I'm crazy about Lovecraft.
Mhm.
However, I would not really consider myself any kind of historian. I mean, I love the work,
Right.
Yeah. me too.
and there's so much of it that people will go like, "What about this story?" And like, "Oh, wait, which one's that?" I mean, I'm that guy. I'm the guy who has to go back and go, "All right, where, what, huh?"
Exactly.
But the
Exactly.
information about Lovecraft himself and his life and how he was raised and what got him on to this path of creativity that he went down is fascinating. And as I was saying too, a bit tragic.
a
Yeah.
little bit tragic. I mean, the tragedy for Lovecraft is more that he was a world-class mind and a very interested in intellect and learning things, but he was also very sheltered, and as a result of being sheltered, he was very, very xenophobic, which has led to the accusations of racism, which I'm sure we'll be touching on. But he he died before he had a chance to really rediscover himself and reform his opinions on life and the universe and everything like that. So he was a man that, if you read his papers and you read his things, you find all those skeletons in the closet, but you also find areas of like, oh, if he only lived a few more years,
right?
He would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
For people who don't know, just to give you an idea, so Lovecraft, he was actually born on August 20th, 1890. He
Yes.
died on March 15th, 1937. So this year would have marked his 130th birthday if he had survived that long.
If he had survived that long,
But-
and
but-
he may have in some form.
But it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's the funny thing, because when he was born and this upbringing that he had, which was kind of twisted in a way, he was brought up at a time where many people in the area that he lived in had similar feelings about society and minorities and people from other countries.
Well, I think it seemed like a through line for him in his personal life and into his stories was the fear of the other. You know, when he
Fear of
was
the other,
he
for
was
sure.
he was in the United States when it was this melting pot of people, and that kind of unsettled him. You know, because I mean,
But also, wasn't there the fact that he was raised in such a sheltered way?
Right.
Yeah.
He had this, his mother was just this domineering force in his life.
Yes.
But domineering in a different way. She wanted to shelter him. And you have to remember, his father died early, and so he was living with his maternal grandparents, and his mother wasn't exactly all there herself. She would die not too long after. He was raised by his aunts, and he grew up in America. It was a melting pot, yes, but not in Providence, Rhode Island.
Mhm.
Providence, Rhode Island was still this old puritanical little conclave up north. And he feared the other because he just in general grew up surrounded by white people, essentially, and in the Northeast, in
Yeah.
New England.
But
And
the other thing though, he wasn't like a big masculine kid. You know, he was actually kind of a scrawny kid. He was a sensitive kid. He was a sickly kid.
he was a
So that
sickly
was-
kid.
yeah.
But a lot of that, I would speculate. I mean, he definitely had some ailments, but he was also, since he was so sheltered and so, like you said, the domineering mother, which was more of a protective shell.
Right.
He was
Yes.
also very secluded. He lived through books up in an attic library. He
Yeah.
really didn't interact with the world very much. He didn't like school very much. He just didn't ever connect. He was an
Right.
introvert in the almost every definition of the word we know now. And it didn't help matters that when he when he went out to see the world, when he moved to New York eventually, and when the world started growing and he started staying put, it became even more scary for him, fearing the others. And it definitely makes its way into the books, the outsiders, the fear of these old ancient religions and tongues
Right.
and practices coming into his world and breaking through the barriers of his safe little world.
Mhm.
Those were his stories.
It's also kind of a classic example of the writer who, like you said, like he didn't get to appreciate his popularity or his acceptance in the literary world, really,
No,
because
but,
he died too young.
He died too young. He had been published in the pulp magazines, and his books were just about to be published in an actual book form. But yeah, he died before he got any real fame of any sort.
Right.
If I
It was
remember,
shit.
if I remember correctly, he had a couple friends, towards the end of his life, who were really big fans of his work.
Sure.
And when he passed away, they belonged to this little group. They took it upon themselves to create a little magazine or a book publishing company that continued to publish his stuff.
Arkham House.
Yes.
Arkham House, exactly. It was August Derleth and Donald Wandry.
And I would say that if it weren't for those guys, it's possible that he may not have been that well known,
Well, they definitely helped. They definitely championed his writing and definitely were trying to get him out there. What really helped him cross over into the public consciousness, which we didn't talk about in the documentary really, and forgive me, folks, don't look to this, what I'm about to say is anything like that you could base a paper on, because I don't remember dates. But they collected his stories in editions that they gave out to the GIs in World War II.
Oh, wow.
Is that right? Really? I did not know that.
Which is really funny when you talk about Lovecraft Country, because it's a soldier coming back from Korea, and he's a big science fiction fan reader. There were collections of his stories put out to the servicemen, so a lot of them were introduced to his writing that way. So that was
Wow.
another thing that helped a little boost for fame for him.
Interesting. Must have been interesting reading for soldiers in the heat of battle, taking solace from reading H.P. Lovecraft stories.
And I'm not sure which ones appeared in the collection, but I mean, if it's the early Edgar Allan Poe inspired stories, that's just, rattling graves and
right, more Gothic inspired.
Yeah, it's kind of like things could be worse.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
He did take a lot of inspiration from Poe also, right?
Sure.
And just as posthumously he was much more popular than he was when he was alive, like Poe, he might not have been as proactively self-destructive as Poe, but isn't it also true that if he had just taken better care of himself, that he might have lived for many years longer?
Well, yeah, there was definitely that. He didn't really take care of himself too well, and then ultimately what he died of, if he had just went to the doctor a little earlier, he probably would have survived.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Right.
But he kept himself so much and didn't let others in, even when he was starting to open up the doors and traveling up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States. He still was closed off to a lot of things, I think. He was getting there, though. He was getting. He had, he traveled as far north as Canada, and he'd gone all the way down to Key West. Which, considering he didn't go much beyond New York City in most of his life, that's saying something. But yeah, if he took better care of himself, he probably would have lasted long enough to see some of the fame that was come his way. But yeah,
but I think
didn't seek it. He didn't seek that fame.
I think, but unlike Poe, what's so amazing of Lovecraft is this, this entire universe or mythology that he created throughout many of his stories and books. Well, and that became the norm, like that other writers added upon. Just the whole mythology idea. That's pretty rare for a literary person back then to have that kind of influence later.
Well, sure.
And that's what I love so much about Lovecraft is it's like he took the Gothic ghost story and gave it a science fiction twist.
Yeah,
sure.
And it works so well. And I love the pessimistic nature of it. It really appeals to me.
Right. Yeah,
like we are just these tiny specks in the universe, and we have no idea what's really going on out there.
Well, isn't also one of the controversies here when whether it's like Frankenstein, it's like, man shouldn't dabble in what God intends to bring life.
Sure,
and here some of his stories have to deal with, well, what if there's these old beings or these old gods? They've been around for much longer, way before Earth time, and when they're here, it's like we're kind of like human beings are kind of like an afterthought, or we're like a little product who these old gods don't really care about us or don't think much about us or don't really even like us.
Or we're actually the product of their tinkering.
Yeah, which
is there's a little bit of that. We were insignificant.
The term cosmic indifference is a great term because it's beyond just, like, okay, a vampire is coming after you. He wants your blood. You got to fight him. The old ones don't even, you're not even worth the trouble. Like you're lower than the dirt on the bottom of my clawed gibbous foot to even worry about you. You're like, you're not even worth the effort. Like that's how insignificant we are in the universe to them.
This is kind of revolutionary, isn't it? This is something that the writers didn't really deal with.
Well, there's some people dealt with it. I can't really point to any specific writer at the moment, but
you mean like an older writer,
an older writer, like a writer of his
Arthur
time.
Machen.
Yeah, Machen was more fantasy driven. Like his Lovecraft's Dreamland books were inspired by Machen and Lord Dunsany. But there was definitely some people who dealt with some of the darker stuff. But you're right in the sense that Lovecraft was one of the earliest authors on record that people can point to where you fought the monsters, you faced off against evil, and it wasn't necessarily a happy ending.
No.
Right.
No.
You walked away sometimes worse off than when you started.
Sure, yeah, insane.
And whereas in the older stories of ghost stories, you'd face the evil, the sun would rise, and you'd be like, wow, so good to be living under God's graces.
Let's go to the Waffle House.
Yes, let's go to the Waffle House. Exactly. And that wasn't what happened with Lovecraft's story.
No.
Which is what's funny, because the one story that a lot of people, and I advise actually people starting with this story anyway, for an introduction to the mythos, is the Dunwich Horror.
Yes, I agree.
The Dunwich Horror is what you suggest people go to first. Is that what you're saying?
I do.
I agree with that. I would probably say it's the closest to a classical narrative.
Right. It is. It's the closest to a narrative he has. And also, but oddly enough, it's also one of the few stories that almost flies in the face of what we were just talking about.
Yes,
it is
right.
a little bit more good versus evil.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
Right.
You know, and so it's odd. It's an odd story, yet at the same time, it's a perfect primer for the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah.
And so
that might make you feel safe in the Lovecraftian world. And then, you know, the next journey that you take,
Right, exactly.
Right.
Call of Cthulhu is such a crazy story in the way that it unfolds, because it's just all over the map. It's just, I mean, literally. And yet, like for me, when I first read that story, it was so compelling because it felt so real.
It was made in a documentary style, if you think about it. It's 3 different like interviews with people collecting facts from these different cases and showing how they're connected. So it's
like this mystery being solved.
Right. It's not even solved, unfortunately.
Right.
I mean, the only thing they solve is that we're fucked. Sorry. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? I forget.
Yeah,
Yes, you
of
are.
course.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what they discover is that
Right. Like, oh shit. Right.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic story. A lot of those stories are like that. And then, you know, you talked earlier about this, how the old ones may have had a little hand in creating us. I mean, that was kind of implied in At the Mountains of Madness.
Yes.
With the elder beings, the elder scientists using the Shoggoths, and how the Shoggoths were these shape-shifting things, and they predated the dinosaurs, and there was all sorts of evolutionary stuff in At the Mountains of Madness that hint that we were like kind of an offshoot of some of that stuff.
Right.
I also like in that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just again, like an afterthought. Yeah.
Right.
The other thing I like about that story is that you also get a look into the elder gods, their problems, because it's not all about us. They got their own wars and adversaries to face.
So, Frank, which one is this?
At the Mountains of Madness?
At the Mountains of Madness. This is
At the Mountains of Madness, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one where the old gods, and they have their own problems.
It's an Antarctic expedition. They're actually following up on another expedition that disappeared.
Right.
So they go looking for him, and they come upon this world of the elder gods. And they think they've got some, I guess you would call them petrified elder gods.
Well, they find some remains, like kind of frozen, half frozen, mummified remains,
fossilized. Yeah.
Right, and of course they think they're dead, and they're not.
Oops.
It's a trope we've seen a few times since then.
And yes, that's right.
And
the
thing, exactly. And then of course that elder being kills the first expedition, and then the expedition seeking the previous expedition finds the camp in shambles, and they trace what they find out from the evidence they find this old half-sunken city in Antarctica with these murals, all this history of these elder gods and their slave race of Shoggoths, and how the Shoggoths rebelled, and there was all sorts of intrigue. And of course, it's all a big history lessons until they run into one of those Shoggoths that's still alive down in the bowels of the city. And without spoiling it, they run off and go mad.
And just when you say old gods and you say they're petrified, we have to, for our listeners who aren't familiar, they're not human-like.
No, yeah, exactly.
And the thing about Lovecraft is the way he describes these things or elder gods or creatures. It's very elaborate. Lots of adjectives, descriptions that take a while to go through and as describing them.
Right, because you really made an effort to make sure these things felt alien, like from across eons of space. I mean, the elder scientists in Mountains of Madness are basically winged cucumbers with star heads.
Yeah.
So
delicious.
Yes. Mwah!
And that's what's so cool about, also just the way he interworks not just it's kind of like science and scientific investigation with archaeology and faith versus science, and that's also fascinating. And like, obviously, like Nigel Neal was inspired by Quatermass in the Pit, because that's very much a lot of the same idea that the architects of the human race were aliens.
The Quatermass series is very much inspired by Lovecraft.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, I'm probably the least initiated on Lovecraft than any of you guys. And it amazed me watching a documentary, Frank, and reading up a little bit on Lovecraft, how much was inspired and influenced by what he did.
Even like movies or shows or stories that aren't official Lovecraftian stories are obviously influenced.
Well, but I never made the connection before. But Alien, certainly the Thing.
Alien.
You think of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. Lots.
That's more of an homage, I would say. Though.
Yeah.
Definitely an homage. Even Godzilla. If you think about it, it's these huge, elder, godlike creatures, especially in the American versions we have now, that basically just go stomping through cities, destroying and stomping. They don't give a shit.
Right. That's true.
It's very Lovecraftian, the Godzilla films. But you don't really think about it as such, and I don't think that they thought of it as such.
Yeah.
But that just points to Lovecraft's influence and carrying over.
Yeah.
Especially in the newer Hollywood Godzilla films, where it's like they've always been there and they've really always been the ones in charge, and we're just kind of here.
Right.
Yeah, look where Godzilla is sleeping in this last Godzilla King of the Monsters movie. He's in an underwater city, much like
that's true. Yeah. That's why I think it's interesting that in the 60s, and especially like when he had several Lovecraft films based on his bigger, stories, it was hard to really bring those fully to life. I think it's the one case where like you really have to have a huge budget with like really, really good CGI and a lot of like talent to make a
and
true
practical effects.
But like you need all of it. I keep hoping that someday like Del Toro or somebody will like make a new version of Dunwich Horror or something, or Call of Cthulhu, because it's really ripe. Like now you could do it, in the same way that like when they've started doing the MCU universe, yes, now we've caught up filmmaking. We can make all out complete superhero epic movies and make them look realistic and believable. I think now you could really finally do that if done right, with filmmaking, with Lovecraft stuff.
But my worry is that if it's done now, because of CGI, they'll rely on that too much, and they'll take away the part of Lovecraft that I love the most, which is the creepiness, the mood setting.
Yeah.
Like with At the Mountains of Madness, the slow build where you're discovering the city. Through archaeology, you're looking at these old ruins and you're what's inscribed on them. I want that to be just as important as seeing a giant, elder.
I mean, or like the Shadow over Innsmouth. Like the buildup of that.
Which
actually is pretty well done.
Not a bad movie.
I have to admit, Day Gone by Stuart Gordon did a really damn good job with that movie. But like, I'm just saying that like Cthulhu himself or itself to be fully realized cinematically,
that'd be lovely.
We have yet to see. There's beautiful artwork, there's figures, but like
and Dunwich Horror, I think, is just ripe for
Dunwich Horror is ripe, and there's definitely a place that you could have physical effects and CG effects, and realize because there's two different monsters that you could play with.
Yeah. Right. Wilbur Whateley has to be practical.
Has to be practical.
Right.
And can you describe that? I mean, I'm sorry.
Describe Wilbur.
No. Okay. Everyone's laughing, but it's like the Dunwich Horror. Can you just explain that? Because I know that's the one that you recommended.
Yeah,
that's what's been made into a film.
Sure. The long and short is that Dunwich Horror it takes place in the little township of Dunwich, and there's the Whateley family who have a farm. There's a lot of whispers and theories about what's going on with that family because Lavinia Whateley gave birth to a son that is ridiculously tall and his goat-like face and very dark, like mysterious, like kind of intimidating figure who stomps along the countryside. But there's also weird sounds coming from the house in the upstairs attic, and their cattle, the number of their cattle is dwindling, and nobody knows why.
They've got a ramp that is
there goes a ramp, exactly. And it all points to basically, let's just say that Mr. Wheatley is not necessarily the father of these boys.
All right.
And then hilarity and hijinks ensue.
Yeah, it really is a good story. And they, one of the early films to tackle Lovecraft story was the 1970 film Dunwich Horror with Dean Stockwell, Sandra Dee.
Sure.
And it was an AIP film in the 60s. AIP were churning out all the Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price, Roger Corman films, and they started to do some Lovecraft stuff too. And this was kind of another low budget horror film from them. And it has some interesting performances. The core of the story is there, but I don't know if it really does justice to Lovecraft's vision.
No, I like it. I like it now more than I did.
Yeah, me too.
Going back to it, I respect it a little bit more for doing a toned down version of that story. But I still, to this day, am waiting to see that practical effect Wilbur Whateley. Like that, the whole scene at Miskatonic University is just so great.
Oh yeah, when he's going to steal the Necronomicon from the library.
I mean, I can see that in my head.
Yeah, it would be
that could be done.
Very, very intense scene. Here, have you guys seen Richard Stanley's Color Out of Space yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
They do a lot of the even though they have way more creature effects than the story does. Yeah. They did go to that Lovecraftian world with those.
Yes. What I liked about that film, it's not a perfect movie, but what I loved about what Stanley does, and Stanley does this really well, is create a sense of insanity and surrealism. And because in that story, and I think even says in the story, like the colors are indescribable. And so how do you put that on screen? But I think they did a really good job with how the area was being slowly infested and the people and just that surrealism of it really, I thought was really good.
I really don't think it's a great movie. I think it's kind of all over the place at times. I wish it would kind of stick more to the story. They add a supernatural element that's unnecessary. I would suggest.
Kind of. I mean, you have the character reading from the Necronomicon. Like, are
you talking about the witch daughter there?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I didn't mind that actually.
That's Richard Stanley stuff. I get it. It's fine. But I think a better version of that movie is Die Farbe. You know that one?
Oh yeah, of course. That's the best adaptation.
Is that the German version?
Yes.
It's a German.
Yeah, I have to see that still. Yeah.
It's actually tremendous. I think it's on some platforms, streaming platforms, under the English Color Out of Space title.
Oh, okay, cool.
You'll know it because it's kind of the logo for the poster is like a black and white tree.
Oh I think I've seen. Okay, cool.
I think that movie.
It's great.
It really hits the mood of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
very bleak. Yeah, it doesn't pull any punches when it comes to just that feeling of dread.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good adaptation, and I mean, look, I agree with you that the Richard Stanley one, it's not perfect. It's got some interesting elements in it, but it symbolizes a big problem with a lot of Lovecraft stories. And I've been trying to adapt a story to a script, and the problem is that the stories, as we've mentioned before we started recording, they're short. A lot of them, they're definitely short on plot and story.
Right.
You have to bring so much to it just to flesh it out into anything other than basically exposition. Mm-hmm. That's what Lovecraft did. He wrote stories of exposition.
Yeah, it's true. Right.
Now, how do you then feel about Die Monster Die? Because they throw a lot of plot into that one.
But see, I thought that was, but it was an AIP film from the 60s. I thought that was more successful at doing an H.P. Lovecraft story than the Dunwich Horror was. Because if you didn't know anything about Lovecraft or that story, I think that movie, Die Monster Die, plays out fine as a typical kind of 60s horror film.
And
you got
Nick,
yeah.
This is with Boris Karloff.
This is all. Yeah. So this is
Adams.
This is the first, as far as I know, the first film version of Color Out of Space. Yeah. And they changed it a little bit, but I thought that was pretty. And that was the same director actually, Daniel Haller, as Die Monster Die.
And there's some
as Dunwich
stuff
Horror
in that.
Yeah.
When they show all the mutated creatures.
Yeah, it's pretty startling.
I thought that was pretty effective.
Pretty ambitious.
Yeah, very much so. And those films, and also you should add in there The Haunted Palace, the Vincent Price film.
Yes,
Is
yes.
an adaptation of the case of Charles Dexter Ward.
Even though they publicized it, even though ironically it was directed by Roger Corman, but they promoted it as another Edgar Allan Poe film,
which is not.
I think The Haunted Palace, that phrase, I think was from a story of Poe's, but you're right.
Is it a poem or?
I think so, yeah. But it's actually the Dexter Ward story. That's right, and that's a pretty good one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one, and that's one of his longer ones too. Dexter Ward. It's actually the closest to a novel he ever got.
Right,
what's the basic story of Charles Dexter Ward?
Case of Charles Dexter Ward is again one of those like the modern being the modern day for Lovecraft, so the 30s, 20s, and 30s. A guy finding out he has some ancestral relation to an older person, and then he go and tell these flashback, basically of a warlock trying to create life in his basement, and he's got a lot of aborted attempts lingering down there. And of course the people, the townsfolk, do a raid, and when they do the raid, they get more than they bargained for.
Yes, they do.
And a lot of scars are left from that encounter that carry over into modern day, and of course the ancestral connection that the characters have.
Right.
And what I love in The Haunted Palace is one of the things I think they do really well. I think that's a great movie.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
Yeah, it is.
But I love how, the people in the town, this is years later, have all been deformed, been cursed. This is, Joseph Kerwin's legacy. And I love all the makeup stuff. There are people that are missing eyes, and there's a little girl with a screwed up face. And Vincent Price comes in there, and he's the descendant of Kerwin.
Correct. Yeah.
And he comes in there with his new wife to move into his inherited place. And he looks around like, the minute I walked into the town and saw everybody else screwed up, I'm like, maybe we should sell. Maybe put an Arby's in there. It'll be fun.
Sean brought up earlier, he had mentioned Stuart Gordon. And
Yes,
Stuart, who he had been on our show a while back. And of course, we talked about his first film, Reanimator.
Yes.
And this is a film that, I mean, people said, oh, it's so close to the original story, Lovecraft story. But it's...
I'm not so sure I agree with that.
No, it's not really.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, it's not dated, but it's, yeah.
It's similar in the sense that they're both Frankenstein tales.
Yeah.
But the actual Herbert West Reanimator stories, and there are multiple stories.
Yeah.
Because it was like...
It's serialized.
It was serialized exactly for a pulp magazine of the time. It's quite different, although there's, you can see where the movie is inspired by it for sure. But I mean, the good thing about Reanimator and the bad thing about Reanimator is that for the longest time in the public eye, that was Lovecraft.
Yeah.
That's right.
Overly sexed.
They associate Lovecraft with like this over-the-top gore-fest 80s horror film.
Yeah, and who thought he was funny? Who would have imagined that he's a laugh riot?
Right. Which, I mean, the movie's fantastic, but you're right. It put Lovecraft in a new limelight, but not really in the right way. But
but it's weird, Matt. I mean, when I saw that film the first time, I wasn't thinking this is a funny comedy. I mean, I didn't think that. I was like, yes, I was.
You recognize though that there was comedy in it, yes?
Well,
and you remember that Stuart Gordon told us that when we saw the movie.
Yes, it's twisted. But I will say, you mentioned, one of the good things. I'd say one of the good things about it was Barbara Crampton.
Of course.
But,
come on.
That goes without saying.
Oh, Jeffrey Combs, though, as well. Everybody. Jeffrey Combs, Bruce Abbott.
It's great.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
Stuart, actually, if we may just go in that direction a little bit, I'm sure you guys have already talked about Stuart and his contributions. But Stuart was really a great filmmaker. He did so many wonderful films that a lot of people haven't seen.
I agree.
And yes, he did a lot of Lovecraft adaptations, and Dagon being one of the better ones.
Dagon's great. Yeah.
From Beyond is actually not too far away.
From Beyond.
Yeah. From Beyond in some ways is the better Lovecraft film, I think.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
It's scarier. Yeah. It's scarier, and also, as you were saying, Frank, where you need a little more plot.
Yeah.
He does a really good job of fleshing out that story.
Yeah.
And that's all credit due also to, because didn't Dennis Paoli also write that script?
Yes.
Yeah. So Dennis Paoli, I mean, Stewart is responsible for a lot of those decisions, but with Dennis Paoli in there, and even Brian Yuzna.
Yes, who later did the Reanimator sequels.
Right, exactly. Brian was the old school showman, but they all, I think, appreciated the source material enough that they wanted to have make a good movie out of it.
Right. And From Beyond gets into true interdimensional creatures, and the body horror, really goes all out in that film, and that's which is great.
Mwah.
Yeah,
so good. Yeah, love it.
Matt, I'm happy that I gave you my little Italian gesture to you.
When we had Stuart Gordon on the show, he talked about an unmade sequel of Reanimator that he wanted to do, House of Reanimator.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Yeah. And I'm really sad that thing never got made, because it was going to be kind of a political satire of the George W. Bush presidency.
Nice.
And it was supposed to be that there'd be a Bush-esque president that dies in office, and the U.S. government has to call Herbert West to come in and bring him back from the dead.
That's fantastic. What could go wrong?
We had when we had Jeffrey Combs on the show, I think he mentioned that too, and we were thinking, I'm so sorry that Stuart's not with us, but Jeffrey Combs is still around, maybe in the hands of another filmmaker.
They absolutely could, and even if Jeffrey's not up for it, don't forget Graham Skipper, who played Herbert West in the Reanimator musical and did a fantastic.
That's true.
I'm glad you brought that up too.
Oh my God, that was great.
That is one of my favorite evenings at the theater.
And
anytime you've got a splash zone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Matt, it was some time ago when we talked about this, but it's Reanimator the musical that Stuart was doing. And you actually had really graphic stuff happen on stage, and it would spill out into the audience, right? And to make sure you didn't get drowned, you actually got, what was it, a splatter?
Yeah, for like the bloods. Yeah, the stage.
It was like the horror version of Gallagher.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. And people would go there wearing their white lab coats so they could get stained pink. Unfortunately, because the red blood they were using was pink, so you would lose pink.
That's true.
Yeah. What's great about that thing too, though, is that it does work as a musical.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was really well reviewed.
Yeah, it was good.
Variety liked it.
And Stuart Gordon directed it too. I mean, he directed the live version as well.
Yeah. Worked on the book with William J. Norris and Dennis Paoli. And then the music and lyrics, Mark Nutter. And the songs are catchy. It's just so much fun. I just thought it was so well done. And it's one of those things that you go, like, if we're going to do everything else on Broadway, why not this?
Yeah.
And it's funny, Matt, you say that because people forget Stuart Gordon started out doing stuff on the stage.
Yeah.
That's what he knew. Filming was not his thing. He actually relied a lot on the cinematographer that he told us about to help him do the stuff for the movie. But
he did like confrontational theater.
Yes.
He gave David Mamet a start. He did the first performance of Sexual Perversity in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and as a result, he also directed a David Mamet adaptation. Stuart did. He did a film called Edmund, exactly.
Yeah.
Which was a Mamet. I don't think it was a Mamet script. I don't know if it was an adaptation of a play, but it was.
It was one of Mamet's earlier plays. And there's a scene. When we had him on the show, I kicked myself because I should have asked him this. It has nothing to do with horror, but he directed a scene in that movie with William H. Macy and Joe Mantegna that comes off as, it's Mamet dialogue, but it comes off as so natural and un-Mamet-like. And I should have asked him, was that intentional? Were you trying to go natural, anti-Mamet?
Right.
But actually, Stuart Gordon, we should mention, is also, Frank, one of the people that you had on your documentary. And you have a lot of great people in it.
Yes, you have like
Neil Gaiman.
Peter Straub, John Carpenter. Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro.
Caitlin Kiernan, Ramsey Campbell.
Yeah.
And other Lovecraftian scholar types. Look, I was very blessed with that documentary because, I wrote a script for the narration, but for the most part, I just got a lot of very knowledgeable, very artistic, talented people in a room and had them talk about Lovecraft and why they liked him.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And
But,
this is
but
great.
again, if listeners have not seen this, you can see this on YouTube, and I strongly recommend you check it out.
Yeah,
H.P.
I
Lovecraft,
have to.
Fear of the Unknown.
I'm going to say as a disclaimer, unfortunately, right now with Lovecraft, any version online is a bootleg. But I am here to say, though, I'm okay with that. Go watch
All
it.
right.
Wow.
But because I'm of that belief as a filmmaker that I'd rather people go see my film than it languish in obscurity because it's not properly distributed.
Right.
We have a new distributor working on some things. There's some problems with Amazon. I'll just say it.
Are you
okay.
gonna do you have any plans to do like a deluxe edition that has
Like a Blu-ray?
like, is there
or-
more to the interviews or
You could interview that podcast, Monster Party, to give their opinion about it.
Some people have asked me to do a sequel at times. But look, we have a Blu-ray that I think I'm a good filmmaker, but I'm a horrible seller. We have Blu-rays of the Lovecraft disc with almost an hour and a half of extra interviews.
Oh, wow.
No.
Where
Did not know
the
this.
primary place you can get it right now, of all places, is Creature Features. Our friend.
Hey.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
They have discs
Okay.
there available that I did sign.
Great.
Nice. Cool.
And I'm fine with this too. If you guys want to put my email address up, if anybody wants to write me, we can work out some PayPal thing, and I'll send you a personalized Lovecraft Blu-ray.
Awesome.
Okay. And
Wow.
when we post this episode, we will
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
that.
Yeah. It's just, it's a very grassroots indie thing, and it's purely because, and this just gets into my personal limitations as a filmmaker. You make a film, and then you go on to the next thing, and you want somebody else to take care of it.
Sure,
And,
sure.
And it's funny because with Lovecraft Country coming out, and it's kind of coincided with our old distributor going out of business, so we're getting a new one now. So I've had to unearth a lot of this stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I'll go to our Facebook page. I've been like slowly posting little snippets of some of those extra interviews there for people to see.
Oh, cool.
And so if you go to our fan page for Lovecraft, you'll see some cool stuff as well.
Cool.
I do, recommend it as, for me, the definitive biography of H.P. Lovecraft, because, like I said, I was kind of uninitiated, and this was the definitive primer for me. What I really loved about it was that it tells the story of his life chronologically and his work, and describes his work and illustrates it just enough so that I get an idea of what all of the major works that he did are about.
Right.
And that's invaluable.
Yeah.
And the phases of his career.
Yeah.
Right, and he
Right.
definitely had phases going on to him. He really has an interesting story. I agree with Neil Gaiman when he says that Lovecraft's upbringing and his life, you can't necessarily draw a one-to-one connection between who he was and his own fears and racist problems and the work he did. I know it
Right.
makes it easier for people to do that, but it's not that clean and simple.
Right,
And
right.
that's what I hope the documentary shows.
Well, and another funny thing, Frank, I mean, this doesn't excuse it, but it's like, as one of the interviewers brought up, was actually, I think it was Del Toro. If you look at Mark Twain, stuff that he wrote, or even Edgar Rice Burroughs, there's controversial racist stuff in those books.
Right.
So in a way, product of the time, product of his upbringing.
Right.
And I mean, again, he lived a very sheltered life.
Well, I can say that when I was first introduced to Lovecraft and I started reading those stories, and it was a collection, and I just started going through those stories, my mind didn't go toward, oh, this is some sort of, metaphor for racist ideas. I just read them as scary, spooky stories. And that's still where they are in my heart. That's how I look at it. And the world and the universe that he created. And as you were saying, Frank, I really do feel like, and I was enlightened a bit about this with your documentary, of how it seemed like, at least, his attitudes were starting to change towards the end of his life.
Towards other races, and yeah.
Well, he started to realize, acknowledge that there was a big, beautiful world out there.
Right.
And there were people in it that were different than he was. He also kept a very healthy correspondence with a lot of other writers who were also, as writers, just open to all things in the world, more than he was. So they would challenge him, too, on his
Right.
views. So like he was definitely starting to grow as a man. Some people point to Shadow over Innsmouth as a little bit of a setback. Like he stepped back, and all of a sudden there was a little bit more racist problems in the way he depicted the fish people. I mean, you can see that as being another metaphor for immigrants or the less fortunate.
Maybe he just hates fish.
He may very well hate fish. In fact, actually, I think he famously did. You know what his favorite dish was? And this was one of my favorite little things I discovered. He loved spaghetti.
Oh, no.
He had a
we could
favorite
have hung out
spaghetti.
with that.
Yeah. He had a favorite spaghetti joint in New York that he would go to all the time. That was one of his favorite things to eat.
Well, it's funny that Matt brings up the fish comment, because I think it was John Carpenter who made a comment about how Cthulhu and the tentacles, and he said, I don't know, maybe he had a thing about seafood and fishmen, the tentacles. And
he definitely had a thing about sea.
If he was racist against fish, wouldn't that be race baiting?
Oh,
Nice one. James is on the board.
There it is, exactly.
Frank, you bring up the fact that he there was a comment about how he did a lot of writing, like letters. He corresponded with all kinds of writers.
Thousands.
There's a belief that he wrote over 10,000 letters to people because he was a voracious writing down stuff in addition to his stories. The thing that surprised me in my research, which I didn't know, was there was a group of friends that he had, and there was a young friend that he got towards kind of the end of his life, a very young writer named Robert Bloch, who went on to go and do Psycho. And at age 17, he kind of befriended Lovecraft, and Lovecraft gave him like pointers and stuff. And in a way, Bloch was called like his protege in a way. But that actually really surprised me. That Bloch was one of those friends, one of those people who was a young writer, impressionable writer, and loved all those creative things that Lovecraft came up with.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of Lovecraft. And this is something that ties in a little bit to a problem that I think a lot of people are having these days, is separating the artist from the art. Lovecraft is one of those people. He always inspired. He created this mythos, and he never really was seeking to profit off it. So he told all the people he would write to, all these fellow writers, go ahead and do something with it. Robert E. Howard, go ahead, take that elder god and put Conan up against it, or Wandrine or Derleth. Yeah, go, Robert Bloch, go write a story that you want. He encouraged that. And what's happened as a result, the Cthulhu mythos now doesn't really belong to Lovecraft anymore. It belongs to a myriad of artists. And including the HBO Lovecraft Country show. I mean, it's like, it's innovative, and it's revolutionary in the sense that we have black characters as the main protagonist.
I see. I'd love to talk about that. I mean,
before you get into that, Frank, I just want to, can you, there's a couple core elements of the Cthulhu mythos that I want you to maybe explain for listeners. Like, in other words, like Cthulhu as the main guy, the Miskatonic University, and the Necronomicon. Can you talk about just how those things fit into this universe?
Well, they're all elements of that kind of the mythos. Cthulhu, of course, he's not even the top elder god. He's like the harbinger of, like, if you start seeing Cthulhu in the oceans, that means all hell is about to break loose.
That means he's awake. Because
he's awake.
For most of history, he's asleep.
Correct.
Asleep dreaming.
Asleep dreaming of fishmen. And the Necronomicon is a more or less, it's easier to say it's the Bible, but it's not. It's supposedly the writings of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred, which he combines all the lore and all the spells and all the research he's made into the old ones into this big grimoire.
Tome,
that people can look in and they can glean things from and learn things from. And one of the copies of the Necronomicon is supposedly stored at Miskatonic University, which is a stand-in for Brown University in Providence.
And once again, in the Dunwich Horror, there's a classic scene with Robert Whateley where he tries to steal it from Miskatonic University, and it doesn't go so well for him.
It does not go very well. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, so those are all elements. It's all color.
Yeah.
And that's what's wonderful.
And that's what like other writers would mention or have the Necronomicon mentioned in their stories,
Exactly.
or reference to Cthulhu or whatever. Like that's so cool to me,
And so some writers out there who actually went out and wrote the Necronomicon because
Right.
Lovecraft never really expanded on it outside of like a few page little. Wasn't even a short story. It was just like the history of the Necronomicon. There's a few pages about, and it wasn't even like what was in it. It was more like the first copy was made by these guys, and then the last copy was here, and the only known copy now exists. It was more of a bibliography.
There was a paperback you could get that was the Necronomicon that supposedly had real spells and everything.
Right.
And I'm thinking back
That's
in the
it.
original. Yeah, there you go.
Sean's holding up a copy.
I love that you can get the Necronomicon as a paperback.
But that's the thing, is it like in the original stories, you got to go to Miskatonic and you got to find it
Now you
in
just
the old
go to
store.
Best Buy.
Now you just got to go to, what is it, Bantam Books.
Barnes and Noble.
Go to Barnes
I
and Noble.
entered the hideous, dark and hallowed halls of Barnes and Noble to find the Necronomicon.
I went to the Reading is Fundamental truck.
Yes.
On sale at a 20% discount.
Necronomicons must go.
Really, they must go.
Well, just real quick, the way I got into Lovecraft stories actually was, I don't know when they were released, if maybe it was in the 80s or it was these books by Ballantine Books.
Oh, yeah.
Put out a series of, they put out pretty much all of the stories, all the short story in like several
Volumes,
paperbacks, and they were Ballantine Books, and the cover art in all of these was done by an artist named Michael Whalen.
Love
And
it.
his visuals of the covers are so cool, and that's kind of how I got into reading all the stories in these books.
Interesting story about those pieces of art. If you'll notice in the documentary when we interview Stuart in his office, he has a print of like all those covers
Oh my
All
god!
together.
behind him, all
Love
together as
those.
one big tableau, and it was
It's
one
fantastic.
beautiful piece they have.
Yeah, really love those. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into reading his stuff.
What were
'cause
the books? Remember there were some paperback books of Lovecraft that were before that had these strange characters of like a half melting head.
Yep.
And
Those are
those.
and I remember, I think that's the first Lovecraft that I read was those older printings.
When I did,
Right.
yeah, not by much though. I mean, they were like those two sets of books, those two sets of editions. I mean, they're not that far apart. The ones with the melting faces are from I think the 60s, early 70s, and those books that you were holding up, Sean,
Yeah.
are from the 70s, like the mid late 70s.
Yeah,
so they're not that far apart.
Okay, yeah, I think I found these like in the 80s, but yeah,
Probably, yeah.
right.
And I have a couple of copies over on my bookshelf of both.
At one point, I got so into Lovecraft that I just sprung for the entire Arkham house, like all of it.
Oh,
wow.
look at you!
Yeah, and it was just whatever, and they weren't first editions. It was whatever editions were available to buy in a bookstore at the time. I don't care about that. I wanted them in hardcover because I knew I was going to keep going back.
That's cool.
And God bless Arkham House. I mean, they're the gift that keeps on giving too when it comes to that type of fiction.
And then in Arkham House, also don't forget they published one of Ray Bradbury's first big books. They published Dark Carnival. They gave birth to a lot of writers we know, and also inspired a lot of writers that we've come to know and love, from Stephen King to Clive Barker. And
Right.
they were the place to go for weird fiction at a time when weird fiction was maybe a shelf in your bookstore,
Sure.
as opposed to 3 rows at the Barnes and Noble.
And it's funny, Frank. We're talking about books that you buy at the bookstore, like one shelf. Back when Lovecraft was doing it, it was like this little thin paperback that was kind of scoffed at. There was you had the Weird Tales or something, surrounded by all these other like Look magazine or whatever. I mean, those were the magazines. They not this funky little pulp magazine. I mean, it wasn't even considered like.
Yeah, it was considered trash.
Yeah.
Well, it was disposable. It was disposable because it was printed on shitty paper. That if you read it in a rainstorm, you would lose the magazine. And it just was really. It was they didn't think much of it. But we know that. You guys, I'm sure, have talked about it in various ways. What we all love has only in recent history been accepted as widely as it is now.
Yes.
Sure.
And even in the 70s and 80s, we had to defend our geekiness.
Yeah,
big time.
Extreme prejudice.
To everyone I ever dated.
Yeah. Now we're calling the shots.
We are calling the shots just in time, right?
We are the elder gods.
Yes, we have become Cthulhu.
we are.
I feel like I am kind of a multi-tentacled creature.
I
get enough drinks in me.
I definitely have appendages I didn't think I had before.
You devil.
Hey, now.
I'm mutating now. Hey, now. Hey, so as you get older, your body does weird things. So the same thing happens when you meet an elder being. Your body starts doing weird things.
So Lovecraft Country. This is from HBO. Came out here in 2020.
New show just premiered recently.
Yeah, and to me it's so cool because I know Matt and Sean, they're close followers. They know all the stories. Mm-hmm. But I thought what was interesting about Lovecraft Country is you have an African American man who just came back from the Korean War, and here's a guy who he loves the science fiction fantasy stuff. The whole opening is showcasing him first, in war, and then it just morphs into this. He's having this dream about science fiction fantasy stuff that are all elements found in all these stories. And for the hints of racism that Lovecraft had voiced, it's interesting how in this you have the main characters are African American. And
it's interesting that they threw this into 50s America, with an African American cast,
and that the characters are talking about commenting on Lovecraft,
which is interesting,
and his racism.
And the thing I love about this is, as terrifying as some of the creatures of things are, it's like the horrible racist people in these towns that they encounter is it's like more terrifying.
Worse, right?
I've only seen the pilot so far, and I found the pilot interesting. I have to admit, all the racial tension drama was really well done. I thought it's interesting because Larry, you mentioned this. I don't want to give stuff away, but you mentioned this opening scene, which is a dream sequence. To me, in a way, I see why they did that scene, because the pilot is I think it's like a little over an hour. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. And it's literally the first 45 to 50 minutes is a very straightforward, very well done, very intense racial drama, literally with no real horrific elements at all. And then you have it's a monster fest towards the end, which is fine. But it was interesting that I appreciate the fact that they're building up the characters. But to me, I thought that opening scene was pretty cheesy. And I knew immediately when I saw it why they did, because there's no horror stuff in the beginning of the show. And it's well, did they have? I could have done without that.
They had to throw that in there to set,
because if you're watching the show, if you're watching 2/3 of the show, what you're thinking is this a horror show?
I agree with that, and I felt like, you've got this drama that's going. I'm watching a show, it's well done.
Yeah,
but I'm watching a show called Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get to the story. Of the Lovecraft.
Well, I don't know how much.
And I also want to say that by the time we get to the Lovecraft stuff, I felt it was a little awkward in the way that it suddenly just erupts into that. And I also one more thing, CGI, not that scary.
Well, I thought some of it was well done. Some of it was it's hit or. I don't know. Like I said, I've only seen the pilot. I'm intrigued. I'm going to watch more.
I'm intrigued too.
But this is a huge budget show from Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams. If there's any chance that we're going to get good Lovecraftian monsters, hopefully it'll be this show. I hope. But
I don't know. I don't know how Lovecraftian it's going to be. Yes, we have a spoiler alert. Am I allowed to say a spoiler here? Should we avoid it?
Well,
there are some Lovecraftian beasties on hand in the show.
Yes.
But I think the Lovecraft Country is more of an entry point. They're holding up Lovecraft as this paragon prime example of racism in weird fiction, in the sense that while many people of color loved and enjoyed those stories and the fantasy of them all, they always would come up against some sort of a wall when they realized it was written by white men for white men.
Right.
And that was really what that's why they call Lovecraft Country. Not to imply, at least I don't think, that it's going to be all Lovecraft all the time. I think what they're going to do is they're going to get into a lot of different weird fiction and horror fiction from Lovecraft's time. I mean, this second episode, without spoiling anything, I don't think, is actually heavily influenced by House on the Borderlands.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm like I said, I'm intrigued. It's the balance that I'm curious to see how they're going to do, because I thought the balance was a little off in the first
I agree.
pilot. I still enjoyed the pilot, and I like what they're trying. I like that they're trying something very different.
I am 100% rooting for this thing.
Yeah, me too.
I really want to like it, and I also know how hard it is to write a pilot. The first episode in so many shows sometimes can be, you're finding your legs.
Yeah.
It's also based on an acclaimed novel by a guy who happens to be my age and is also from Queens, like I am, and also happens to be white. And it's like, like I'm trying to sort of piece together how someone like that could have come to write a novel like this, and I'm just interested in the source material. I'm interested in the novel itself.
It's interesting that this thing got greenlit too in such a high profile way.
It's high time for black protagonists and a black perspective on weird fiction is something that we don't have a lot of to point at. I mean, you can point at Candyman,
which I like a lot.
Tales of the Hood, and stuff like that. But this is them doing that. And look, it's also extremely on point for what Lovecraft wanted. They've taken this source material, and as well as many other influences, and made it into their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much in the spirit of what all the Cthulhu Mythos stories are. And I look at these stories not as a rebuke of Lovecraft, which I think a lot of people were hoping for. A lot of people who get angry at finding out somebody was a racist in the 20s and 30s and want to see him crucified. One of the reviews I read of the first 5 episodes that was given out to reviewers, one of the reviewers was saying, well, they don't rake Lovecraft over the coals very much in these first 5 episodes. I'm like, why should they? It's like, we all know he's a racist. We all knew he was a racist. We all know there were problems with him. But clearly whatever he did had enough life to it and interest to it that you were able to build a whole entire TV series around it.
Right.
So how much do you really want to rake this guy over the coals if your show would not exist in the format it does if not for the fact that he created this world?
But when you're watching a show called Lovecraft Country, there can be a temptation to want this thing to be something that maybe that it's not, that's not the point of this. The point is something else. And so that's where, like, now that I've seen that first episode, I'm willing to relax into it a little bit more and like, no, you tell me the story that you want to tell me.
But see, here's the funny thing. I mean, I get it. You're Mr. Lovecraft. You know everything.
I'm Mr.
about
Lovecraft.
yes, because I think most people out there, I don't think that they're as well informed or know
Probably
much about
not,
Lovecraft.
Well, no, that's why it has to appeal to a wide audience.
No, and for Sean and Matt, look, they know a lot of stuff. I don't know as much about Lovecraft. And when I started to watch this, number one, I didn't find the opening to be cheesy. I loved it. I just sucked it all up. And I love this main character of Atticus. And I love Letitia and
I like
Uncle
everybody.
George.
The characters are great. Acting is good.
These 3, I mean, I fell in love with. I loved these people. And you just like them. They're regular folks. And then when you see the stuff that happens to them, it just horrifying. And look, okay, because I lived in a different area, predominantly white, I didn't know about the sundown town. I didn't know what I do.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
I knew from seeing the film Green Book, I knew about this whole thing about here's a little thing that African Americans can look at that says these are safe areas to travel. But here they show it in this. And it's like you love these people and they go, there's a sequence where they go, hey, so there's this diner that we can go to. It's here. And they go to the diner. It's under new ownership. And just the reaction that the people give. I mean, it's
horrifying.
Chills.
Yeah, it really is.
And then you feel for these people. I mean, it's funny. There's Lovecraft monsters, but then there are humans that are monsters.
And that stuff I really love.
And look, monsters on both sides.
I mean, it's funny. Matt brings up, look, you have this opening, and then, okay, we're not going to see anything for a while. Kind of like Valley of Guanji, where we're expecting, we're going to see dinosaurs, and you have to wait 45
That's a jump.
minutes.
That's a strange comparison, but okay.
Well, but it's like I was more engaged in this than I was with Guanji. Waiting for the dinosaurs. You guys are like, I'm waiting for the Lovecraft creatures to come out.
Well, look, if you're going to have a criticism of the opening, and this is me more as a writer, filmmaker criticism, is that opening is such a huge climax of a scene.
Yes.
It's so big, and then to go from there to basically go from the raid on the Death Star, if you will, to basically having people talk about midichlorians for about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I also don't like seeing a big, huge creature visualized so nicely, and it's wasted in a dream sequence. In other words, the big monster I saw in that opening first 30 seconds, save that for the real thing later. Like that's like they better build up to it nicely.
Look, I didn't mind it. I actually loved it. I embraced it. And then the next thing you know, here's this book that he's reading, and he tells stories about. Well, what's this book about? Well, it's about I love that.
I would have, again, from my armchair filmmaking position here, I would have loved to have seen them do something more Lovecraftian in that segment. And later on in the pilot, I would like to see more mood. I'd like to see the stuff that makes us love Lovecraft as part of this. Once again, this is somebody else's vision. It's not mine.
And maybe
they're telling a different story than bringing Lovecraft stories to life, obviously.
Right.
And so that might be something that is for another show. But I have to say that with that first episode, even with whatever critiques I have, I'm intrigued, and I do want to watch more.
And the fact that there is a major television show right now involving Lovecraft is great.
Yeah.
Totally. Exactly, and that's a good thing. Look, episode 2, you'll find more of what you're looking for.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Great.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with it.
Yeah, definitely. See, I agree with Larry. Larry, it's really a wonderful show. It has its failings like anything else. Nothing is ever really truly perfect, especially especially after all the stuff we've all seen and made and listened and read over the years. I mean, it's hard for anything to really knock you off your feet these days.
Right.
For close to times.
I mean, I have to say, so far I'm a fan, and there's this little sequence which really I found to be so terrifying, where our main character's in a car, they step out to kind of, where's this abandoned road? And all of a sudden, this cop pulls up, and apparently he's a notorious one that they knew of. Mm-hmm. And then they're saying, look, hey, we'll be on our way. And the thing that gets me is, you think that, okay, just get out of our town. No. The guy's got to play with him. Like, this is sundown town. You only have about 7 minutes to get out of here. Oh, well, we'll speed out of here. No, they can't
give too much away here, because that's a really great scene.
But it's like all the things that this sheriff says. It's just horrifying,
especially because it's like based in real life.
That's the thing.
That's what's
On one hand, it's like this shit happened, and that's a terrifying thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, is that those are the monsters that really do exist and really did exist,
right?
And they're treated as such in the way they do that show. And it's also interesting that because of what you're describing, Larry, when the monsters, the ones we all think of as monsters, do appear, they're cool, but they're nowhere near as scary as what
true.
And it really brings up a truly terrifying thing. It's like, what is the more horrifying thing? Is it this, like we've talked about, whether it be Frankenstein or Dracula or, something like a human person or like a creature. And it's like almost the human person is more terrifying.
And also those creatures in that episode, in a lot of ways, behave as a savior in a certain respect.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's a little bit like if you ever saw Clive Barker's Nightbreed, that a lot of the same themes of there's a whole race of all kinds of monsters, but you know what? They're nothing compared to the human monsters. Yeah. I mean, he actually really hits you over the head with it, actually, in that movie. But still, But still,
or the yokai monster series from the '60s from Japan, where they were actually heroic compared to the Yakuza
No,
Yeah.
they're almost divine retribution.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that whole idea, like you want to see true unspeakable horror, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know?
I do
Yeah.
every morning.
Yeah, every
I'm
morning.
terrified.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a great show. People should watch it. And I hope we see more like that. I hope we see more different points of view coming to Lovecraft, because that's what's going to keep it alive for another 100 years.
Well, there's no shortage really right now of Lovecraft. I mean, there's a lot of Lovecraft out there. There's comic books, there's games, there's movies, there's short films. There's so many Lovecraft film festivals where everybody makes a short film. And if you go online, there's just so much material out there. Now, of course, I would love some really good high-end quality representations of Lovecraft's work, but it is cool to have Lovecraft action figures. You can get them now.
Right.
You know, you can get a Cthulhu in one form or another relatively easy now.
Now, you know, Frank, before the show started, we were talking a bit about Disney. When Disney owns stuff, you know, if you want to try to make like a Pinocchio figure or something, you know, you have to pay a licensing fee.
Right.
The interesting thing about Lovecraft is because Lovecraft, he never really had a pinnacle, you know, it was like he wasn't really thought of as a great writer. What he did was that great. It kind of almost vanished if it weren't for those two guys who put together that publication. But isn't it true that all the stories, they kind of fallen into the world of public domain?
But most of them have. I mean, you'll get arguments coming from all sides, but I think the prevailing belief and wisdom is that all the stories are public domain. The one story that's a little bit of a question mark is Shadow over Innsmouth.
Oh, really?
Because Shadow over Innsmouth did have a proper publication before Arkham House. Now, Arkham House for the longest time claimed ownership to the stories, but what they really have ownership of, in my understanding of copyright law, I'm not a lawyer, just saying, is that August Derleth heavily edited Lovecraft stories for the publication in Arkham House. So a lot of the criticisms that people have of Lovecraft, where he used exclamation points all the time, and that's all stuff that Derleth brought to the mix.
And so you mentioned August Derleth, and there was another guy, Donald Wandry.
Yeah,
so these two guys, they were buddies of Lovecraft's, and when Lovecraft died, they took it upon themselves to start the Arkham House.
To start Arkham House, not just for Lovecraft, but for all their other friends who needed publication as well. But they, as you'll know, like every time there's a new translation of Beowulf, let's say, it's the way to basically own a copyright of Beowulf, but you don't own the story, you own that translation. So Arkham House owned the Arkham House versions of the Lovecraft stories. What's happened since then is S.T. Joshi went in there and stored all of the stories to as close to what Lovecraft originally did. That's mostly what you have in that big Barnes & Noble hardcover book that you can get. And those are all public domain. Shadow over Innsmouth is probably public domain too, but there was a little bit of a question mark about it because it was published not by Arkham House in its initial run, so there may be some long forgotten, nobody's really bothered to collect on it, copyright tied to the story.
Was there also some sort of controversy when it came to August Derleth, these stories where it was supposedly Lovecraft and Derleth wrote them together, but it was just the nub of an idea from Lovecraft, and then really most of it is really just Derleth?
I guess Derleth is Lovecraft's Christopher Tolkien, for those people who get that reference.
Yes.
I think Matt did. So let me go another way. Derleth took some like unfinished stories or unfinished bits, and I'm sure stuff from letters between the two of them, and built out other stories that were really just Derleth writing his own Lovecraft's tale with HP's name on the byline. So I'll admit, in the research for the story, even though I was familiar with what happened after he died, I didn't really put much time into August Derleth, and a lot of people probably will tell you, you probably were wise not to put much time into August Derleth. His biggest claim to fame is Arkham House and how he championed Lovecraft stories.
Right.
You know what? I've read some of those stories, and they're fun. They're not. It's not in the same league.
But again, Frank, if it weren't for those two guys, we may not know Lovecraft's name.
Absolutely.
We have to be thankful to these guys. And,
Absolutely.
And as the decades progress, I mean, in the 60s and the 70s, we had these funky little Lovecraftian type films. And in music, I think it's Metallica, the rock band with Kirk Hammett, big Monster fan. Who did
all those guys.
Call of Cthulhu. Matt's holding his hands up.
Ningen Isu, the Japanese metal band Ningen Isu, who just recently became known to the world. They have been around since the 80s, and they've got just countless albums that they've been putting out over the years. They're kind of considered the Japanese Black Sabbath.
Wow.
They are so damn good. Listen to any song by Ningen Isu, and you'll be blown away. If you like that type of music, they are so good musically, and they love all the stuff that we love. And they have done so many songs based on Lovecraft.
Well,
They've done
you're like
Dunwich Horror.
You're like the hard rocker. I thought you'd like that Call of Cthulhu.
I enjoy Metallica as well.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, Ningen Isu has done song after song after song after song based on a Lovecraft story. One of the easiest songs to find on YouTube is The Color Out of Space, Ningen Isu. These are guys that they haven't been making a lot of money from their music over the years. And so they've been, their first 4 albums, they were dropped by their label, and they had to kind of self-produce these albums over the years. But they kept together because they loved what they were doing. They really were just doing it for the music. And Color Out of Space is such a great song. The video is just them in the forest playing their, and it's not, there's no big production value, but the songs are so great. But I consider them the definitive Lovecraft rock band.
Well, I'm going to throw one band out there for you. You guys may not have heard of. I have to double check on the name occasionally because it's a long one, and I just know them as the Hillside Thickets, but they are the darkest of the Hillside Thickets. They are a quintessential Lovecraftian band. They play the Lovecraft Film Festival, or have played it many times.
Oh, wow.
And they have albums like The Dukes of Alhazred, Shadow Out of Tim, Cthulhu Strikes Back, Let Sleeping Gods Lie. They're a fun band, and they got great
Are they
music.
Metal?
No, not really. No, I almost wanted to call them prog rock, but they're not even that really. They're a rock band. They're a rock band.
Cool.
I love it. I can't wait to sample them.
Definitely check them out.
Obviously a lot of Lovecraft-inspired works, but if I can bust out a couple.
Sure.
One of them, Alan Moore, author of Watchmen.
Of course.
Hugely influenced by Lovecraft, especially the last couple of decades. He did a series called Neonomicon about 10
So
years ago.
good. Great.
It's awesome. Because
Followed by Providence.
Yes, and then Providence, which I haven't read yet, but he wanted to get into what Lovecraft couldn't do because of the time, as far as especially the graphic sex. It is explored very graphically in Neonomicon, and is very disturbing. But man,
but not gratuitous. It fits
not
the story.
It is the story,
and it's terrifying.
I don't know.
Dark.
There's some gratuitous sex when the girl goes into that cult in the bathhouse. And there's this monster that gets pretty graphic. Look.
Gratuitous is in the eye of the beholder.
Wait, where can I get this?
And in Alan Moore's case, it's extremely there on the page. Let's not forget this is the guy who wrote Little Girls. And even From Hell has a lot of, like, how should I say, naughty bits.
Sure.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. No judgment thrown at Alan Moore. I love him to death. However,
another one I would throw out is one of the very last things that Paul Naschy did in Spain, which was 2 movies called The Voldemort Legacy. Yeah. Frank, are you familiar with this?
I'm not familiar with. I know Paul Naschy because of the werewolf stuff, and I actually helped do a documentary on Naschy.
Really?
Perry Martin, who's a guy we used to work with at Anchor Bay. So we had some nice Naschy stories.
Cool. We got to do a Paul Naschy episode.
Yeah.
Oh, not with me though. There's better people to talk about. You talk to about Naschy of all things is Del Howison over at Dark Delicacies.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Del acted with Naschy, I think, is what it was.
Is that right?
I remember years and years ago, I went to Dark Delicacies and got something signed by Nashi. He was there at Dark Galaxies. I
That's
got to meet
crazy.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nashi came to town. And Del can tell you a lot of good stories. Well, Del can tell you a lot of good stories, period.
Cool.
But definitely about Nashi. I'm sorry, James.
No. This was a pair of feature films that were actually produced by Universal Pictures Spain, and they were pretty big budget. And they were the Voldemort Legacy Parts 1 and 2. Didn't have anything to do with Voldemort Daninsky, the werewolf. Instead, it was about a character who. It's a period piece. He's introduced to Aleister Crowley, who becomes a big part of the story. They conduct a seance, including Lizzie Borden, and Bram Stoker shows up.
Wow.
And then in the second movie, Lovecraft himself shows up.
Wow. You gave. I think you gave me those discs for the. I mean, I've seen all of Nashi's stuff, but not the later ones. So I'll have to watch those now.
Well, Nash has a very small role in it. He's only like the butler, but
okay.
They're interesting, and they're not. I can actually sort of recommend them. They're kind of fun, especially if you're a Lovecraft fan. They're well done.
You brought up comic books, and there are a lot of Lovecraft comic books out there. And, Boom did Fall of Cthulhu, which is really enjoyable. And Cthulhu Tales is another series from Boom that's also fun. A lot of, different artists and different writers contributing things. And if I could do a self-promotion.
Please.
I worked on a comic. When Dark Horse started creepy again, I got a shot to write a story for one of the issues.
Oh, wow.
And I worked with my good friend and brother-in-law, Derek Robertson, of Boys fame.
Mm-hmm. The Boys.
And so for Creepy number 10, that turned out to be an entire Lovecraft issue.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And it's really good. There's a lot of great stories in there. There's some reprint stuff too, but Peter Bagg is in there, Richard Corbin, Kelly Jones. I'm in the middle of all these greats, but I wrote a story called Minton Package.
Oh, I love the title.
Yeah.
I love the title.
And the story is about these cursed set of action figures that if you open them, if you take them out of the package, they will release these creatures, these Lovecraftian creatures into the world, and that'll start the end of the world.
Aha.
Yeah.
So the only thing you have to do to stop Cthulhu is encase him in lucite.
Just keep them in the package.
Keep them in the package.
Yeah. And so,
that's what I've been saying for years.
Right. And so, maybe I was channeling you in a strange way.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you may have been.
But it's it's a lighthearted story. It's dark humor. There are a lot of Lovecraft references throughout the story. Some amazing artwork by Derek, but he's always amazing.
But you say creepy number 10.
Yeah.
Creepy number 10?
Creepy number 10.
Yes,
Of
the Dark Horse series.
That's it.
Correct.
The Dark Horse series. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I wanted to talk a little bit more. Some of them maybe more lesser known, obscure films that were either directly Lovecraft stories or inspired by, because they made another Color Out of Space adaptation in the 80s, directed by actor David Keith. He made a film.
Wow.
He made a film called The Curse.
Is that good?
It's not bad actually. It's with Will Wheaton.
Not bad. Will Wheaton. Yeah.
Will Wheaton. He's the son, and Claude Akins is the super religious, stern father, and they're on a farm. And it's the Color Out of Space story. And Will Wheaton, has to watch as his dad goes crazy and his mom starts mutating. And John Schneider is in it. He's kind of like the guy investigating the water, that's being contaminated. That's not bad actually. It's it came out like in the 80s during when last slasher films, but it's pretty good.
If I may give a shout out to a friend of mine, he should do an updated version of this. My friend Andrew Migliori, who also helped me do the documentary, and John Stryzik, they did a book called Lurker in the Lobby.
Lurker in the Lobby.
Yeah, and they haven't done an updated version of it. I'm looking at it up here because it's on my shelf. It's basically a history of Lovecraftian movies made up into like around mid-2000s. It covers television too, like the Pickman's Model version.
Right.
No.
Cool Air.
Cool Air.
Right.
So they talk about a lot of that. So Lurker in the Lobby. I wish Andrew would do an updated version of it, Andrew and John.
Yeah, that's a great idea for a book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great idea for a book.
Well,
Frank, you need to call these guys. You need to call them because look, what's everyone doing? We're still sitting at home.
Well, I know what Andrew's doing. Andrew's making money hand over fist because he works in the tech industry, or whatever they want to call it, the Silicon Valley type thing.
Okay.
He makes like good, serious money. Not this like piddly movie industry money.
Well, there's another Charles Dexter Ward adaptation, which is interesting, but I don't think many people know about. Directed by Dan O'Bannon, called The Resurrected in 1991.
Yes.
The Resurrected.
Chris Sarandon as Dexter Ward. It's also good. It's kind of like almost like a detective story. Like this detective is hired by Chris Sarandon's wife to investigate him. You know, weird stuff is going on. Yeah. But it's pretty good. It's got great creature makeup effects in it.
It's fun. It feels almost like it's a pilot for a show.
Yeah.
The fun thing about that is there is a director's cut. A work print director's cut.
Is it the one that's on the Blu-ray? Because I got the Blu-ray.
No, it does not exist on video. It was supposed to. Diane O'Bannon, who's Dan's wife, it's been a while since she told me the details of this, so forgive me, Diane, if I messed this up. They wanted to put the director's cut on the Blu-ray, but they messed up in negotiations. They didn't get the clearances correct. She has a print of it, I believe.
No.
And she's loaned it out to the Lovecraft Film Festival. They've shown it, the actual Dan O'Bannon director's cut, because the one on Blu-ray has been kind of hacked into what you were talking about.
Yeah, it had a troubled history. I think it had trouble being released. And I think it was Dan O'Bannon's last film, if not almost his last film. And but it's interesting though. And of course, Jeffrey Combs played Lovecraft in a 90s film called Necronomicon: Book of the Dead.
Yep.
Which is kind of like an anthology, separate different stories. It wasn't bad,
That's okay.
David Warner's in it and Richard Lynch. I mean, and the bracketing story is Combs as Lovecraft kind of trying to get the Necronomicon or something, and stories filter out from that. But it's, interesting.
What's funny, if you remember when we had Jeffrey Combs on the show, he talked about that, and he said, he's what 5'10" or 5'5". He goes, and I'm supposed to play this character who's like 6. He goes, it was kind of a stretch, but are you sure you want me to?
Yeah.
And so he did it. Hey, he's a working actor.
Wearing Herman Munster boots.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, we have to say our good friend and many-time guest C. Courtney Joyner did a decent adaptation too of The Lurking Fear in 1994. That was also fun. That also had a great cast: Jeffrey Combs, Ashley Lawrence, John Finch. Low budget full moon film, but pretty good.
It's pretty fun. Yeah. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I love that story, by the way.
Yeah, I think in the original story it was more like a mansion, right? I think in the movie they made it like a monastery. I think.
Well, it was a monastery graveyard, but it was definitely more of a mansion. The Lurking Fear and Rats in the Walls are two stories that feel very connected. They're almost like similar things of somebody finding out about their not quite human inherited or defiled human heritage. Oddly enough, Lurking Fear, in a very ass-backwards way, was a major influence on the script I wrote for Wrong Turn 6.
Oh, really?
And a lot of people don't realize that when they watch the movie, because most people just like to say how awful it is. But the truth is that when I wrote Wrong Turn 6, a lot of the heritage thing that the character's going through and finding out about how his human ancestors are not quite right. Very much a Lurking Fear theme, and that made it into that script and into the movie a little bit.
Cool.
I love it.
And, we talked about Dagon, which is great, I think which is a great version of Shadow over Innsmouth. And even Castle Freak, which Stuart Gordon did, is loosely based on The Outsider.
Yes.
Very loosely.
Yeah. But those are both enjoyable films. And one film that's not directly connected to a Lovecraft story, but is very inspired by Lovecraft, was a 90s, I think it was a TV movie original or a cable film called Cast a Deadly Spell.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. This is produced by Gail Ann Hurd, and it's done in a world that's kind of like a 40s film noir detective universe. And in this universe, black magic and the black arts are kind of just used by everybody. But the one character, this kind of Philip Marlowe type character played by Fred Ward, named Lovecraft, I think Frank Lovecraft or something. His name's Lovecraft, but he actually hates magic. He doesn't like to use magic. It's kind of like a little funny. It has comedy in it. David Warner is the bad guy. He's trying to kind of bring forth the old ones again. But it has like witches and werewolves, and it's really fun. It should
really
be made into a series. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Wasn't there a follow-up too?
There was. It was called Witch Hunt with Dennis Hopper.
Right.
Which it wasn't quite as Lovecraft inspired, I don't believe, but I don't think that one was as well received.
No, that didn't get as much love.
Yeah, but I really like Cast a Deadly Spell. I think originally it was just called Lovecraft. I guess they figured that wasn't catchy enough back then.
Did anybody see the more recent version of Dunwich Horror from 1990?
No.
I only took a quick look at it, but I was a little surprised to see Dean Stockwell was in it.
Really?
Oh, yes, I heard about this. Yeah, I did hear about it.
I don't know if it was a sequel or
I think they just got him.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, it was nice to see him. It looked like it was straight to video, like literally somebody with a digital camcorder.
Really?
Very, very low budget.
Yeah.
Wow, weird. And also a really good film. I think Matt originally turned me on to, but I really enjoy this one, Frank, which I'm sure you know about. It's from 2005. It's called Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. It's Sean Brandy and Andrew Lehman. They did a silent movie adaptation of Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, so as
complete
if
with,
it was done.
puppets and as if it was done in the 20s and 30s. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic. They also did a very, very good adaptation of Whisperer in Darkness.
That's right. Yes.
And that one was like if it was as if it was filmed like in the 30s, right? 30s or
30s, 40s, lots
Yeah.
of miniature work that looks gorgeous.
Yeah, stop motion.
Stop motion.
Yeah. Check both
have
those out.
lots of love. Both are effective. I would say that Call of Cthulhu works better because I think it's a little more, it moves along a little better than the other. And I love I love the effects. By making it a silent film, they can get away with some primitive effects that just add to the creepiness of everything.
Yeah, it actually works.
The way that they do water in the ocean is really inexpensive, let's just say.
Yeah, but it's clever, though.
It pays off. And then
it brings it to life.
And stop motion Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Stop motion and puppet.
Mm-hmm.
And guy in suit for like 1 or 2 bits, I think.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're really good. They really bring the spirit of Lovecraft. It really works, I think.
They do excellent work over there. They also do a lot of radio play adaptations of Lovecraft's works, and they're all top-notch productions. These guys, they are so overly talented at what they do.
Whisper in the Darkness, I thought, was a little talky at times.
Maybe.
But I still think it's great.
They used to, and this may bore some listeners, but they used to have an all-Irish theater company called the Banshee.
Wow.
On Magnolia Boulevard, which was kind of diagonally across from Dark Delicacies we mentioned earlier. And they would do nothing but Irish plays. Okay, that's Sean to a T. And lots of whiskey. So
you were also talking about doing these audio plays.
Yeah, that's what they do. Yeah.
I love that kind of thing, and I love audiobooks just in general. But there was one that I had for years that I listened to again and again and again, and I've still got the book on tape. Yes, the book on tape, and it's The Dunwich Horror and the Rats in the Walls, read by David McCallum.
Oh wow!
And that is probably, and I've listened to a lot of these. And this is still, I think, my favorite.
He's such a great voice, too. That's great.
Yeah, and he does a really good job of when he does Wilbur Whateley's voice,
right,
making it sound like, it's someone trying to speak English through inhuman lips. Really
that's
good.
That's one thing I think in your documentary, Frank, you mentioned, which I think is really cool, how the conflict about how you spell or pronounce Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah, right.
And it's because the idea is that it's not meant to be pronounced by human lips. That's why there's no real good or bad way to say it. It's like it's something beyond your comprehension.
Oh, the whole entire Cthulhu, Fatayan, Finglui, and all that. If you try to say the Cthulhu speak at all, it sounds silly.
Right.
Only David McCallum can pull it off.
I think you may be right. I think it just requires a little bit more gravitas.
Yeah,
totally.
So, Frank, you mentioned the Lovecraft Historical Society?
Yeah, Lovecraft Historical Society. Sean Brandy and Andrew Lehman, they are the key guys over there, and they did that's Call of Cthulhu and Whisper in Darkness and all those radio plays, which are fantastic.
And so they're just trying to keep Lovecraft alive through these audio plays.
Yeah, and then what they also do is cool. They have a little store in Burbank, and they also do these little kits where they do and they do it with their CDs as well. Like they'll recreate news clippings from the Arkham Observer about the Miskatonic University expedition to Antarctica.
Oh, that's awesome.
like reproductions of like telegrams from Willits to so-and-so and all these different.
That's cool.
They do all these because they also, the story, which is pretty much apocryphal, but I'll tell it anyway, was that these guys used to love to do LARPs.
Okay.
Cthulhu. And they were running around in full 1920s Cthulhu with revolver type things. And a cop pulled over, saw them doing their thing, and said, "What are you guys up to? Why are you here?" And one of them turned around and said, "Well, we're doing a historical recreation. We're the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society." And that's how that's
great.
What they to the company.
That's great.
I'm pretty sure it's all apocryphal. Sean and Andrew will probably hate me for telling that story, but I'm going to go the Liberty Valance route on this one and say it's
It would have been great if the cop pulled him over and went, "Say, Mac."
Hey, Mac.
Well, you guys mentioned, I think we briefly mentioned the two very memorable segments of the Night Gallery series from the 70s.
Sure.
Right.
Cool Air, which is based on Lovecraft's story, and a mysterious guy has to be kept in this refrigerated room in this boarding house or whatever, and it goes very badly. And of course, Pickman's Model, which is a great story, and that
Great
one has
story.
Bradford Dillman as this kind of tortured artist who does these ghoulish paintings, and you find out where he's getting these.
Where does he get his models?
Yeah, where does he get the inspiration for his paintings? Really, really good, really creepy. This is 70s television, but I did a pretty good job being creepy and scary.
Yeah,
And even though
And the creatures.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, even though Rod Serling is the face of Night Gallery, I want to say that the executive producer, Jack Laird, was really the influence behind putting Lovecraft in there.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah.
He had also produced a pilot with Leslie Nielsen. I can't remember the name of it.
It's called Dark Intruder.
Thank you. Yes.
And that is a great pilot. It's great. It's like takes place at the turn of the century. And Leslie Nielsen is kind of like this Sherlock Holmes type of detective, but he's like an expert in the occult.
Oh,
and
okay.
he's investigating these murders going on, these little statuettes of like a demon found at each murder. And it's great. It's been released.
Turn of the century Kolchak in a way.
Yeah, he really
Wow.
is. It would have made a fantastic. Oh no,
Me either. I've never seen it.
You gotta see it. It's. I think Dark Intruder has been released on DVD as a double feature with The Nightwalker, William Castle,
Right.
Barbara Stanwyck film. Dark Intruder is released with that. Dark Intruder is like I think just barely an hour.
Right.
Okay.
But I think it was released theatrically because it was considered too strong, whatever, for television, I think. But
drive-ins.
Yeah,
double feature.
but it's in black and white. It's really cool. It's worth checking out. Yeah,
I'll totally check that out.
It's very Lovecraftian for sure.
There's a lot that is.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife, for ages, she was an English teacher at a high school, and she had a science fiction class. And there was actually another teacher who was teaching the science fiction class, and apparently he was a diehard Lovecraft fan. Now, this is high school, and sometimes some of the Lovecraft stuff, I think, is difficult to read. And when you think about it, when you're in high school, maybe the stuff that you should read, like regarding science fiction, would be something like Frankenstein or Fahrenheit 451 or 2001. And this one particular teacher was telling my wife, "Oh, I gotta have my kids do Lovecraft through most of the semester." But it's like the principal was saying, "No, you can't do that. You can only look. You can do a few, but not some." But Carrie just felt that she didn't have enough time to go into Lovecraft. She felt like, look, the guy's ideas on race and religion. It's like I just don't want to go there. And it's funny because that's what some people say, but if you can separate perhaps the man, and as you said, over the years, the man kind of evolved. If you could separate the man from the work, maybe you should explore the work.
I mean, he expressed anti-Semitic views and yet married a Jewish woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the controversy, and I tried to find out some proof of what I'm about to say, but I couldn't find it anywhere. But the paper that he wrote on the creation of the N-word, which a lot of people hold up as like, see, this is the proof. And it is proof. He had the racist beliefs and everything like that. And he also is racist in other places, but this is like the big smoking gun.
Right.
My understanding, and this was through a conversation with S.T. Joshi and Robert Price, who now is a person who's also in his own cancel culture problems. So
I see.
take that for what you will.
Okay.
But Lovecraft never intended that for publication. It was not. It was published posthumously when they posted all of his papers. He kept it in a drawer. He wrote it, never wanted anybody to see it. Then, of course, he dies. They find it and they publish it. And then everybody assumes that it was published in 1912 because that's when he wrote it. And to my knowledge, my recollection, and again, I could be wrong, and if somebody knows for sure, please email me.
But he also wrote some things about Hitler in the early days of Hitler. And
well, the early days of Hitler, but so did like so many other people, from Joe Kennedy to God knows how many people.
Yeah, Henry Ford.
Right.
But he was a early brand of Aryan. He believed very strongly in the success of the Teutonic race,
Right.
which is basically a precursor for Aryanism. I'm not here to say he was not a racist, but I think his racism was born of severe xenophobia and a severely sheltered upbringing and a severely shattered upbringing. He was a nervous type. He had a lot of problems.
Yeah, he wasn't a happy guy.
He was not happy. Not always very, very happy, and came dangerously close to breakdowns on many different occasions.
Yeah.
So if there is such a thing as a qualified racism, I guess I would say that's what he is. Again, it doesn't excuse it, but it just explains where it comes from more.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, Frank. A case in point is that in the documentary, I think it's mentioned that it was through his wife that he had his first experiences with sex, and they were very opposite, and that she kind of brought him out in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So what you really have is a very, very repressed person.
Yeah.
Very much.
In many ways.
Some good sex will change your attitude.
Not entirely sure how good the sex was, but
still,
is there a journal about that?
I think there was also like a 10 or 15 year difference. She was much older than he was.
She was much older. She was much more worldly. She had been around a bit. She experienced things. She lived in New York. Sonia was her name.
She had her own business. She had a hat business, right?
Yeah, she had a hat business, and that was ultimately the success of her business is what led to their marriage falling apart, because she had to move to the Midwest to go after a job opportunity. And Lovecraft was bad enough he had to move to New York City. He didn't want to move inland even more.
Right.
So he stayed behind in New York, and she would visit him when she could. And left to his own devices in New York City at the height of immigration, he was doomed. He couldn't deal.
Yeah. And that's when he went back to Providence, and that's when he wrote the last of his stories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He moved back to Providence, and that's when he wrote Call of Cthulhu, essentially.
Right.
And then it all went from there. Look, I mean, without getting too deep, and again, I am an older white guy saying what I'm about to say, but I mean, in my experience, racism comes from a lot of different sources. I mean, there's racism of ignorance, which is this type of stuff that we are tending to deal with today. But there's also a racism of fear, and I think that Lovecraft was more of that. And once he started overcoming that fear, I think he was overcoming his prejudices.
Yeah.
And
fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not that I was trying to tie it in that way, but thanks.
Well, yes, his wife had this hat business. But if he had lived, and let's just say he lived to outgrow his racism, he would have seen a business opportunity open up for him, and that is in action figures.
I would think so. In fact, he was known for his doll collection.
Well, is that right?
No, I'm totally fucking with you.
You know what?
I was about to go into dolls with you, but
oh dear God.
Okay, but look. Switching off to like the world of toys and action figures, Matt.
Sure.
You bring up a really interesting thing. There are plenty of,
recently, especially there's two nice Herbert West figures from Reanimator. There was the smaller Monstars Herbert West figure, which is very nice. Mm-hmm. But then NECA put out that great kind of 8-inch Mego style Herbert West
beautiful.
Figure. It's beautiful.
Perfect.
there's those nice, I really enjoy those. I think the company's called Warpo, those Legends of Cthulhu.
I have all
figures.
those.
And those are cool because there's like the little Cthulhu spawn, there's a deep one, there's a little cultist in a robe, and there's a professor. Those are cool. I really like those.
And I have this big glow-in-the-dark Cthulhu that goes with that set.
Oh, really? Oh, I think I saw that. And of course, we have to mention, also beautiful figures from our friend, Monster Party supporter, Monster Party guest, Kevin Smith from Sea Demon Vinyl. He put out these Sofubi style, an elder thing, and also
Cthulhu.
his own, Cthulhu. And he coined the Johnny Innsmouth figure, which is kind of like a general kind of like Lovecraftian creature, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
That style of toy, I think, lends itself very well to Lovecraft monsters.
Yeah. And I think right now he's working on, or I don't know if he's finished it yet, but Wilbur Whateley.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No.
Fantastic.
So
That'd
great.
be a lot of fun. I just saw the announcement this past week. It's like something for $77. Bandai is putting out, Lovecraft had done a sketch of Cthulhu that a lot of people may have seen. It's basically the big chubby Cthulhu with the round Charlie Brown head. And somebody's done a whole sculpt toy, articulated toy of that. It's coming out through Bandai.
Oh, man.
It's articulated?
Yeah, and like articulated, you can swap out the legs and arms too. So, because the drawing is Cthulhu seated like he's on the toilet. And
he's like the thinker.
And they got one where he's standing up like this.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
It's the most unscary version of Cthulhu you'll ever see, but because it's Lovecraft's sketch, I have to.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Well, and you touched on that in your documentary, too, like how you can get, it's funny, really, in pop culture now, you can get, Lovecraft socks and Lovecraft plushies, cute little Hello Kitty style Cthulhu's,
Exactly.
There's a series that they did that was a few years back, and I've got all of them, and I love this line of figures. It was called Nightmares of Lovecraft.
Ooh.
It was Soda Toys, and they did Dagon. They did a ghoul, Pickman's model ghoul.
Cool.
And then they did Cthulhu. They did Cthulhu in two different color schemes. I think there's maybe even three, but I have two of the different color schemes, and they're just beautifully sculpted figures. And they can be a little pricey these days, but it's worth it. What I wish is that there were more figures of different Lovecraft characters. I've got plenty of Cthulhu's right now.
Right,
I'm good with Cthulhu's.
He's the most popular. He's the most,
But if you get some of the games that are out there,
Cthulhu
Wars, which is the Sandy Peterson game, and it's this massive game where the premise of the game is that all the creatures from Lovecraft have taken over. Mankind is basically wiped out. And so the game is you are controlling one group of entities, and these different entities are having a war between each other. But the real selling point for this game are the figures that come with it. These plastic, imagine like the most beautifully sculpted Marx playset figures.
Yeah, like Mark's toys from the 60s.
Right, exactly. And they do pretty much every one of the Lovecraft creatures from every novel, for the most part, they've covered. And then they will also do ones that are written by somebody else from the Cthulhu.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is it kind of like
there's a Hound of Tendalos.
Is it kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons game? You got to put them all over the board. And...
Yes, yeah. And I have this game, and I have a lot of the extension boxes to get more of the figures. One day I will actually play this game, but I'm terrible at this kind of stuff. Like, I set the thing up and I'm like, what is going on? There's so many.
I need something a little more simple, like a Hungry Hippo. If they're maybe made like if they're made like little Cthulhu's.
Hungry Dagon.
I mean, that's something like, let's play Dagon.
You know what they should do? They should do like, how they do all the different Monopoly games based on Star Wars or Harry Potter. They should do like a Cthulhu Monopoly game.
They have one.
That's a great.
Do they?
No.
I own it. Give me a second.
Oh my gosh. You kidding me? That's awesome. Wow.
Who would have known?
Yeah.
See, it just goes to show there's a monopoly for everything now.
There is. Yeah. Oh my gosh, he's holding it up. Okay, that's cool.
So Frank is holding up Monopoly.
It is a
Cthulhu.
must-have for any Cthulhu, and it's got the little figures and stuff in it too. So
No way!
Wow.
So there's Cthulhu Monopoly. I don't think there's a Cthulhu or Lovecraftian game of life, but there should be.
See, now, Matt,
That's the one.
Yeah, really.
Well, a Cthulhu Monopoly, that's something I could do.
So it's instead of like go to jail, is it go to Arkham instead of like go straight to Arkham?
Something like that. I think because I have it here, and why the hell not?
Yeah.
What is Boardwalk? Because Boardwalk's always like the premier real estate.
Is that Innsmouth or something?
Yeah.
Is that the Dream Realms?
Maybe the Dream Realms. Let's see here. I'm going to open up the board, folks. So Boardwalk is Cthulhu himself, actually.
Ooh. Wow.
So like the actual properties are characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Free parking, jail, and the go are all the same things. But like the knowledge, you have knowledge and sanity cards as opposed to chance and.
That's great.
That's good. Yeah.
That's great.
So,
We'll have to get a Monster Party and play that.
I want a Lovecraft mystery date.
It must be done.
Yeah.
It must be done. Lovecraft is a gift that keeps on giving, and I think
it really is. It's interesting, like you said, like Matt says, it's an interesting time now because there kind of is a lot of Lovecraft out there, which is nice, Yeah,
and I think that as people are reevaluating the man, and that's fine, you should.
Right.
I think that if anything, it just keeps on pointing to the fact that what he created is going to endure.
Yeah, and something like Lovecraft Country, is high profile enough. Hopefully, it will introduce people that don't know about Lovecraft.
Oh, absolutely. I hope so, and I think it should. Yeah, take him off of the World Fantasy Award, fine, but don't cancel Lovecraft, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
You won't have as much fun, and you'll find it is extremely hard to do so. It's like he's like the weird fiction form of herpes. And hopefully on that note.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, Frank, I just want to thank you for being with us. And
this is a particularly gibbous episode of Monster Party.
No, Frank, now I know you're working on a lot of stuff. Is there anything you can let our listeners know? Is there anything you got to plug? Or if someone wants to see this stuff, or can you tell us about what you're
what's going on with Frank Woodward
What's
right
going
now?
on with Frank Woodward? Right now, Frank Woodward is spending way too much money on stuff that, considering that none of us are working. A case in point, I bought all of the Christopher Lee Draculas on Blu-ray. So
nice. Yeah,
I owned them, some of them on normal DVD, but I upgraded. But the only thing coming up for me right now at the moment is I have a short film called Clean, which is going to be premiering in October at Screamfest in Hollywood.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
If they actually have an indoor event come October, let's cross our fingers.
Right.
And I'm always working on something.
Sure.
We've been trying to launch a new show about Disney collectibles, which you can see a little bit of a sizzle reel of that on my YouTube page. All this stuff is really just the kind of stuff you do when you're in a pandemic and you have to do something more than any huge thing coming along.
But Frank, you mentioned if someone wanted to get this other stuff Blu-ray from you, how would people reach out to you?
At the moment, the best way to reach out to me is to email me, and you guys feel free to pass on my email address as a link.
We'll take care of that.
I'm fine with that. You can also reach out to me through the Facebook page for Lovecraft Fear of the Unknown. Okay. We don't have a formal engine in place necessarily. Like I said, we've been selling the Blu-rays through Creature Features, and you can order them through there. Cool. You can also order them directly through me, and we'll work out a PayPal mail scenario. Awesome. I'm fine being the Johnny Appleseed of indie filmmaking, just going around handing out copies. So I'm also still doing my podcast, Film Sense, and I've started playing with a second podcast called Mission Geek Out, which is
I don't know about this. Mission Geek Out.
We're only 2 episodes new. I record that with Paige Barr, who's my niece. But what I like about it is I get a generational view on a lot of geek topics.
Oh, that's great.
So there's a couple of episodes like that. You can still get that through the Film Sense page on Libsyn.
But Film Sense, iTunes. I mean, you've interviewed a lot of people. And
quite a few people. And we try to do as much as we can. So we have a couple new episodes up. But one of our key episodes is with the production designer team of David and Sandy Wasco, who did most of Quentin Tarantino's films.
Nice.
And that's a really nice 2-part interview that you can catch on the Film Sense podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, Frank, thank you so much for being with us,
Thank you.
helping
you
to
for having me on.
educate
This is
us,
Yeah.
Really?
and to talk about.
And for those listeners who haven't seen it, I would say check out Lovecraft: Fear of the Unknown. It's a great
Absolutely.
documentary.
Please
For
do.
sure.
A super good time.
Yes, the epic conversation. Thank you.
And so, if we could raise our glasses to our lovely and talented guest, Frank Woodward, and the legacy of Lovecraft.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You guys are all fantastic. Clink, clink, clink.
Cheers.
Exactly. Oh, I need more whiskey.
Time for a listener shout out.
Shout out!
Shout out.
This goes out to Darlene King from Dublin, California, who's now the owner
King.
of a Monster Party glow-in-the-dark t-shirt.
Darlene.
She's
thank
glowing
you.
now.
Purchased from our eBay store, Monster Party store. Thank you, Darlene. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
representing. And also to longtime listener Jai Titcombe from Queensland, Australia,
I love Jai.
Yeah.
Hey.
who's also a Patreon member,
Cool.
Mhm.
who reached out to us directly and said, "Hey guys, love your work. So glad you guys are pumping out the funnies during these crazy times."
Oh, you have no idea, man. We're pumping.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a laugh riot around here.
I want to order a cap, but as I live in Australia, it won't let me. What gives? I need to buy a cap.
Oh, no.
Either a cool Monster Party one with 11 billion stitches, so says Larry, or failing that, a MAGA hat that I can set fire to.
Look, I never said 11 billion.
Please help my ever decreasing self-esteem and sense of style in these end of days. Jay Titcombe, Queensland, Australia. P.S. I would be so honored to be the first international Monster Party beneficiary. And also, more Sue Murphy, please. Love that crazy gal.
As we all do.
Yes.
We love
Yes.
Sue Murphy.
Thank you, Jai. And while we cannot offer our extension of free shipping to overseas customers, what we will do is that if you do what Jai did and inquire on eBay or reach out to us directly on Facebook, we'll find out exactly what the shipping is to your respective country, and then we will just charge you exactly what that would cost. So at least you won't, have to pay an over the top shipping fee.
Right.
But sometimes you can get sticker shock from some of these overseas fees. So
Yeah.
we'll do what we can. We're honored that you want to represent in your country around the world. So we'll do whatever we can to help that out.
Yeah. And James, you brought a Patreon. And once again, I have to tell everyone that we have this wonderful Patreon account that you can join. You can become part of the Monster Party team for
Yes,
only
you can.
$5 a month.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Yes. You'll be helping us, and you will also get bonus audio, video, and we're always trying to think up new things to, reward our listeners with. Also, when you order merch, you will get a little extra something. You'll get some goodies from Biff Bang Pow Toys, donated by Jason Lindsay. Yeah, it's a good time. Now, when it comes to overseas things, the minute you add anything that adds a little more weight to the package, it may exponentially cost you more money. So, we'll try to figure out some way to get around that and yet still get you some goodies if you do that. But
Right.
But $5 a month, man.
But $5 a month.
Look, I spend more on ramen each month. Come on.
You know what? I think that's a proper amount of ramen per month. $5. You're not going crazy.
No.
You're enjoying yourself. That's what is that? It's not really 5 ramens.
No.
It's like 20 cups.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
I guess it depends on where you get your ramen.
I like my ramen, okay? I like it.
We all love ramen, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh,
But the point is $5. It's a month. It's you won't
It's a
even
steal.
notice. You won't even notice
Right.
it's gone.
Such a deal.
You may notice it's gone, but I don't want to set up any expectations there.
But Matt, look at what they're getting.
Yes.
Bonus content.
And you're helping us. You're helping us keep this thing going.
Oh,
For
yeah.
that alone, you'll always have our thanks.
Yes.
Indeed. And hey, let's also remind everybody that you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV. All of our episodes stream on YouTube, but if you go back to our very earliest YouTube uploads, you can find videos that we did years and years ago.
Imagine that. Visually seeing us together, sweating and arguing.
And
they're very Lovecraftian. They're oozy.
They're gibbous.
But listen, I think some of those are worth checking out because you've got all these different clips from Comic-Con and our Japan trip.
Yeah.
And we got Planet of the Apes stuff.
The Apes, yeah.
And
Planet of the Apes is
Halloween
great.
stuff. It's fun stuff. And it's
like vintage. Think of it as vintage Monster Party.
Well, look. Also, if you look, there's that Monster Party Goes to Japan, which again, my wife and I just watched it the other day because she forgot. I started mentioning some. She goes, "Oh, let's watch that again," and it's just it's so fun.
A modern classic.
It's such a wonderful trip. We went to so many places. Check that out on YouTube.
Those are deep cuts, and they're right up there on YouTube. So yes,
and they are a squamous good time.
And also reach out to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle at Monster Party HQ. Our Instagram handle also Monster Party HQ. And whatever platform you're listening to us on, please take a moment, write a review. We'd love to hear from you, and guaranteed we will read it on the air.
Oh yeah. On that note, I am Matt Cthulhu Weinhold.
I am Sean Yog-Sothoth Sheridan.
I'm Larry Azathoth STROTHE.
And I'm James, the Deep One GONIS.
Keep America strong.
Explore the worlds of H.P. Lovecraft. Minus the racism. So far, it sounds awesome.
Fantastic. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi,
Hey.
Frank. So great to see you. Thank you.
Guys too. It's nice to see people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do a lot of Zoom calls, but I do them enough. But it's just kind of like, it's nice to see new people I don't see often.
Nude people?
And
Nude? Wait, you're not nude, or is this just like one of those Snapchat things?
Sean always wants to do a nude episode for some
Not just
reason.
Sean.
What?
Hey, let's all be honest. How many people are wearing pants of any real sort?
Swim trunks.
Usually I'm not. Today I am, yes.
Well, you guys know me well enough to know that I paint on my pants.
I would paint on my pants, but I fear for the public.
Well, excellent.
Thanks for having me on again, guys. This is going to be fun.
No,
Yeah,
this is going to be great.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a topic that we all love.
Yeah.
Not more than
we
others.
really wanted to do for a while.
Really
as
couldn't
an
read
exclusive.
one story. Couldn't read one
tried.
short story.
I
Not even
tried.
one?
I tried. I
do you mean you
get through it.
tried?
It's like, it was just hard.
You know,
not used to
What?
that.
They're mostly
century-old-
They're mostly 10-page short stories.
Yeah, they
Well,
starts with a guy in an insane asylum
Yeah.
telling you about how he got there.
No.
I was spoiled.
That's in the mouth of madness. It's not quite like that.
Well,
Spoiled
It's a
by
guy. It's a guy
Stephen
writing a
King.
memoir after he went mad. So you have no idea why he's writing it.
yeah. We don't know where he is. He could be in an insane asylum.
He could be in an insane asylum. He could be chattering around in the basement. Who
Look,
knows?
Frank, I'm just trying to make this as easy for them as possible to understand. I'm just trying to set a table that they will eat at.
It's very simple. White man goes into a white town,
Yeah.
comes up against something that's really, really different than normal, and goes insane. That's it.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound
Pretty
great,
much.
guys?
But it's pretty much what it is. Until the last couple of weeks. Now we let people color in.
Oh,
Frank,
oh.
how do I pronounce the word Is it gibbous or gibbous?
I've heard it as gibbous.
Gibbous.
Yeah, I always thought it was gibbous. Yeah.
Gibbous.
Yeah, gibbous.
And
That's a big
eldritch.
Lovecraftian word, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that and eldritch.
It's a Lovecraft word they like to use. I don't think he coined it. If that's what you're asking.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't
used it a
say he
lot.
invented it. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, gibbous, batrachian.
He put it on the map.
Eldritch.
Yeah, eldritch is definitely his on the map. Squamous.
Squamous.
Yeah.
Squeamish?
And squamous.
That's my dark internet alias name.
Squamous.
Yes, that's going
Squamous
to be
Sheridan.
my porn name is going to be Squamous Frank.
Squamous.
So
Oh, now, come on. Oh, your porn name, huh?
my porn name.
Oh, like you're working behind the scenes of.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
I thought Woodward would have been your porn name.
What could
It's funny, Frank. In the area that I live in, it's a pocket in Lake Balboa, and there was this house that had gone up for sale. And, like many houses, they had an open house, and I decided, I wanted to check it out. And I go into it, and it's built in a very funky way. Things are made to look kind of sexy. It had like a bunch of mirrors and special tile. They enlarged the house. They made this giant bathroom. And you look at it and I was like, it's not really well crafted. It's like made almost like movie set stuff. And then it hit me and we were told the person who bought it, they enlarged the house and they made like a house that they could film a lot of porn in. And so as they're selling it, they have to, let people know. And I'm thinking, gee, I wonder if I've seen this or something, seen the scene or something like that. And then I thought to myself, it's come up for sale like 3 times since we've been living here. And I'm thinking, it's kind of a large place. I mean, do I think I could just get over? So this large bathroom had people having sex all over it. It's like a good price. I could have this large bathroom. Maybe that'd be okay. But nah, I think it'd get a little too weird for me.
Yeah, there'd be some energy left over, I imagine.
Positive energy.
Yeah.
It depends on what kind of porn stars you had in there. I mean, it could be the abused kind. It could be the I'm totally into this kind of thing.
No.
Classics.
This is classic. It was yes.
It was
player.
It was no dungeon.
No dungeons or anything like that.
No.
Not the kinky stuff.
Well, why would you want it then?
Yeah. Well, Larry is a little Pollyanna-ish.
Why would you want I would need a dungeon if you're going to go full board porn house.
First of all,
I just want the option of a dungeon.
Have you ever seen the movie Pollyanna? It's a nice.
Of course.
Yes, it's a nice film.
I've seen the porn version.
Hey, look. All porn joking aside, I am an avid Disney movie collector. So Pollyanna, of course, being one of those films, and so I'm all for the nice, wholesome entertainment as well.
Sure.
All right. Well, that's our show.
No.
And there it goes.
No. I have to ask Frank a Disney question. Okay, so you're Mr. Lovecraft and you're also Mr. Disney. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of things pop up on Facebook about they're going to have this new Blu-ray box set. Have you seen this? It has like all the Disney movies. Have you seen this, Frank?
I've seen that. It's clearly a pirate thing.
Are you sure? Because the funny thing is, it has pictures of all the films, and in the corner, it's Song of the South. And I'm like,
I saw that. Yeah.
Wait, they're releasing Song of the South?
No, then it has to be. Then it has to be a pirate.
It's a pirate. It's either a pirate thing or an overseas thing, because Song of the South is on disc overseas, or it has been.
Yes.
Look, Disney they don't work that way. They don't work. And they're not going to bundle their classic films.
Never.
That price, especially. But I saw it because I saw it. I was like, oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
What was this?
Well, thanks for coming to the table here, Matt. So
I had to go and do some things for our show. Okay, sorry.
There's this thing on Facebook, and it's been popping up about how you can buy this whole box set of like Blu-rays of all the Disney films, and it has pictures of all the movie posters. So I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh my God. And then in the corner, there's a picture of the poster, the Song of the South. And I thought, oh my God, they're releasing it. And Frank's telling me that it's probably not a legitimate Disney
Yeah.
thing. It
You
could be
think so?
something that's from
It's Malaysia.
Well, here's the thing.
I've also heard that it's been purposely infected with the COVID virus, so don't get it.
There you go. Yeah.
So Frank, I take it you've heard what's happening to Splash Mountain.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, all of Brer Rabbit and Song of the South, that's going to be gone.
Oh, I mean, guys, if you want to do a Disney episode or a Disney tangent, please, I have plenty to rant about.
Well, I don't want to turn into a negative thing.
No, not a negative thing. Not a negative thing. It's actually more of for me. It's more of a thing about. I'm fine with them changing it over to Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, me too.
It totally makes sense in the way that Disney works. That's a very popular property for them. To have it represented in the parks is a big tick up in their sales. And Song of the South has its problems, and it had its run. And
don't laugh.
Have you seen it?
Don't laugh. What do you mean don't laugh, Larry?
Actually, have you watched it lately?
I have watched it a number of times.
No.
And the fact that guy is singing at all is proof that this is pure fantasy.
That's a beautiful
in the
song.
antebellum South. Well, I mean, look, it's for me.
It's nonsense.
And we're going to be talking about this with Lovecraft a lot, but like for me, that's a sign of just Disney being entirely clueless about how the people. I think
racist.
I think it's racist in the sense that it's looking at the antebellum South with these rose-colored glasses of we solved slavery and everything was happy again.
Right. He's not the only one certainly that did that.
And he definitely, they talk about the history about he wore blinders to a lot of that because that's just the kind of guy he was. And, we could debate whether or not he was also a secret racist himself. But, that goes back. But look, I watched that on a double bill with Song of the South once. Song of the South and Princess and the Frog. And I think Princess and the Frog has characterizations like these kind of almost dangerously close to step and fetching vocalizations in Princess and the Frog too.
Sure, yeah. Well,
I don't remember that.
Any old Hollywood, film. I mean, all the roles that Mantan Moreland and all the butlers, all the African American characters, all the Charlie Chan films.
Right.
To
have that in Princess and the Frog, I didn't feel that they came all that much forward with some of the characterizations they had in Princess and the Frog. Now, and I would also argue that Gone with the Wind is more of a racist film than Song of the South, because that was depicting the actual period of slavery where everybody was hunky-dory. And we
sure, but that's the book. I mean, right. The book has this stuff in it, and it was Selznick who actually wanted to tone a lot of stuff down.
Right.
Like he removed the N-word. He didn't feel that was appropriate, even at that time.
So Uncle Remus is post-slavery, is what you're saying.
Well, the Uncle Remus is post-slavery. The whole story is post-slavery. It's the antebellum South, as I understand what the antebellum South encapsulates, which is the Restoration. It's after the Civil War, where everybody, still living in harmony, and there's still the happy-go-lucky, magical black man taking care of the white kid.
Sure,
it's racially insensitive, and it definitely when it came out, which was at a time when Jim Crow was in full swing,
right?
It just makes you.
Just tone deaf.
Yes, extremely tone deaf. That's exactly.
Yeah.
Look, when I saw it as a little kid in a movie theater, it was like a double bill, and it's like I almost wasn't really aware of it. It was just like he was this.
Well, of course,
happy
you're a little kid watching a movie.
Yeah.
And back then, a lot of that stuff you didn't really think about because it was just presented to you as entertainment. You thought, oh, well, this is the funny guy,
Yeah. And in fairness, look, it's obviously one of the films that Disney is embarrassed about, and they're trying to, let's kind of put it aside. There are some things that they did way back when.
I would say when it comes to Splash Mountain, I'm sure that most of the people that go in there, even though they don't show Uncle Remus, have no idea who these characters are.
No, they don't, and they did a very good job of just stripping it all. Song of the South is mentioned nowhere in the rides.
No.
And it's and also most of those characters are reused animatronics from the America Sings attraction.
That's right. Yeah, they reused a lot from that show.
Yeah,
they took everything. I remember seeing that entire show in that carousel thing, and then years later, the first time I went on Splash Mountain, I went, oh my God, here are all those figures from that thing I saw.
Right,
Well, I guess that was one way to recycle the animatronics. I thought it was a way of Disney trying to, hey, let's save a buck. Let's just take these little mechanical guys.
Yeah. I mean, why not, really?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Why
totally.
not? Here's the thing also. As much as everybody wants to claim, not everybody, but a lot of people want to claim the changing over of Splash Mountain as a victory, they were planning that for a while.
I bet.
Disney does not react to petitions. Sorry, guys. The only time I know of that they did it was with the Aladdin song, when they had to change the lyrics in the opening song to Aladdin.
What was changed?
I don't remember that. Wait.
It's the song where the Arab bazaar guys riding through. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. You know, it's just like Arabian Nights song. And he said there's the line that he originally sang, and I have it on the original soundtrack album. Is like, where they cut off your ears if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
Wow.
That was how it came out in theaters.
Wow.
And a whole bunch of anti-defamatory people from the Arabic world like, no, sorry, no.
Was there ever any big outcry over Ray Stevens' Ahab the Arab? Remember that song?
Wait, was that a Disney thing?
No, it was like a novelty song. It was the guy? What's his name? Was it Ray Stevens?
No,
yeah, Ray Stevens did Guitar Zan. You remember that?
Yes.
The streak.
The streak.
He was like a pop song guy.
And it was like a funny song about. Let me tell you about Ahab the Arab.
Well, I think there would definitely be a backlash about it if anybody
played it right
beyond us. This little group we're talking about here remembers it.
Yeah. Sure.
But I mean that's also true. I mean, look, to be fair, we're a group of white guys, and we grew up on Three Stooges, where the Step and Fetch It guy was comedic relief. We didn't think about it as being a racial stereotype.
Sure.
We just thought it was funny, and the same thing with everything else. I mean, I watched Africa Screams on TV, and then I watched it again when I was doing the Men in Suits thing, and I was like, "Holy shit, that thing's racist!"
Yeah. although it's funny even though there are some obviously very racially insensitive things in the early Little Rascal shorts.
Oh God, yeah.
But I would also say that in those shorts, Stymie was, most of the time looked at as an equal.
I was thinking,
and in a lot of ways, sometimes he was one of the leaders of the.
That's right. He was one of the leaders.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think some of those things that are the tone deaf or racially insensitive are necessarily driven by the kind of racism that everybody's marching against right now. I think it's definitely. I know everybody's tired of hearing the phrase, or at least everybody that's under 30, but the product of the time is very much a key point. It's just you didn't know. I mean, for the longest time, my parents, maybe your parents, I don't know. Every once in a while, they'll slip a colored in there.
Sure, right.
But that's how they grew up. That's the phrase they were taught.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because they were trying to denigrate. It was just like that's what they heard, and that was what was in the zeitgeist.
Well, there was a number of people and some relatives who would say, Chinaman, and it's the man. What? It's the man from China, Chinaman. I'm like, I have a feeling that you also know that that's wrong, like in your heart of hearts.
Well, I think and that's the thing. I don't think if it was pointed out to us back then that it was wrong, I'm sure we would have course corrected.
Sure.
Right.
Well, speaking of wrong,
we can use none of this.
No,
we can use that.
How about
you want to start officially? I'm sorry.
We always just record a little stuff.
Okay, I'm fine. You can use what I'm not worried about that.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
no, I was joking anyway.
Because
I've been canceled already.
Well,
from the Monster Party convention.
It's so interesting. We've been talking about doing something like this for a while. I think that show Lovecraft Country, I think really helps.
I've only seen the pilot so far, so if people have seen more, fine. Don't give away.
No, that's fine.
No,
that's fine.
It's not perfect.
I found we'll get into it. I found the pilot interesting.
Let's hold on to that.
It didn't blow me away.
You hold on to that thought, sir. So, Frank, you know how this is done. We've done.
Refresh me.
Well, what we're going to do is Matt's going to introduce the show. We introduce ourselves. We say what the topic is, and then I'm going to introduce you as our guest, and then we'll go to town. Okay?
All right, let's do it.
All right.
And we're just saying the topic is just not like the world of just H.P. Lovecraft.
Do we need
Lovecraft?
to say the world of, or can we say Lovecraft?
No, just that's what I'm asking. I think we just call it Lovecraft.
Or
Okay.
the mythos of Lovecraft, because that's the
Ooh.
I like the Lovecraft mythos.
The Lovecraft mythos. Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever you guys want.
Guys,
Whatever you guys want to do. It's all is appropriate.
The Lovecraft mythos?
I don't
Lovecraft.
care.
Yeah.
Lovecraft is to the point, simple and to the point.
Just
Everybody would know what
Lovecraft?
that is. Yeah, how about just Lovecraft?
Yeah,
I would
just
vote Lovecraft.
Lovecraft,
Lovecraft is sexy.
three exclamation points.
But it's like,
No.
shouldn't it be, it's like, expanding because it's,
Well, just by saying Lovecraft, doesn't that cover everything?
all right.
Okay, I think it will. I mean, especially because it seems like if we're going to talk about Lovecraft Country, and we're going to probably touch on the racism stuff.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
It's going to be that's kind of Lovecraft.
Well, okay. You're a fellow podcaster, so I like your suggestion. So, Matt?
Lovecraft?
Lovecraft?
Yes, let's do it.
okay.
You all right, Larry?
Yeah, we're not going to call it the Lovecraft, just Lovecraft.
Yes, Larry. We're going to call it the Lovecraft.
We're going to call it the weird, wacky, wild world.
And
Lovecraft.
Well, I'm going to call it Lovecrafty.
Okay. Let's do it.
Or, hey, how about Lovecrafting?
Lovecrafting.
Lovecraft.
Wow.
Well,
No.
is that misleading, isn't it?
It's
Because
maybe a little
I
bit.
was kidding, and there's no way we're calling this Lovecrafting.
that was a joke.
Yes. I will be pointing them out in the future.
I'll hold up a sign.
Thank you very much, Frank. I really appreciate that.
I'll hold up my Pandora knife.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that a
I
Pandora
really
knife?
need all the help I can get.
From,
That's
the-
beautiful.
The
Yeah.
Animal Kingdom in Disney World.
I love that.
No. Did you like the ride? Did you like the ride?
Yeah, I like both of them. They're really magic. The whole place is actually, for a movie that most people have already forgotten, they did a really nice job making the whole place look very, very pretty.
Well, there's a new one coming out.
Oh, goody. Let's get back to Lovecraft.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're gonna do a whole Avatar episode.
Oh, I
down
can't
the
wait.
road. Yeah.
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 No, I think you're going to do that
Yeah.
on that podcast that you start.
Oh, hey, before we go, we're all on camera. Are you guys doing video on this? Because
No.
Okay.
No. Just
Why?
We only do video really just so we can react to each other.
It's more
Yeah.
like I think Sean will take some stills of you.
no, I don't even have to do that for this one.
Oh, I'm
We're
fine. I'm fine with it. I just noticed, the Larry has this nice background and everything like that, and
No, don't worry. That's fine.
So I wasn't sure if you guys. I actually dressed in case you did. I do not normally go into my Zoom calls.
Oh, we know you dress.
Do
You always come camera ready, and we appreciate
That's
it.
right.
you need to change? Do you need to be more comfortable?
You need powder?
I don't. I'm fine.
So Sean, you're not going to take a picture of Frank?
Well, no, I already have a good
Will you
picture of
stop
Frank.
ordering everybody
Yeah, I
about,
already have
please?
a good photo of Frank from our last podcast.
I asked.
I was lighter
question.
then too, so it's good.
Wait, is he by himself?
Yes, Larry, you've seen what I've done with what Gina's done with the photos, right? So don't worry about it. It's taken care of.
No, I think
All
you
right.
should worry about it because this is where it's all going to fall apart. This episode. Yeah. Nobody gives a fuck about
The
this one.
photo.
No.
Nobody's going to listen to this, please.
Yeah.
Hey, I trust Sean.
Right.
I'm good.
So do I. I'm kind of sweet on him. Okay,
As
here we
we
go.
all are.
Shall we?
All right.
Wait.
There you go. A little vodka.
No, I got to be sharp and alert tonight.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Moment of silence. Greetings, everyone. And welcome to a particularly squay and... I'm sorry. I need to say that again. It was going good, though, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Here, let me start again.
You were
Sorry.
gonna do a word, right? One of those.
No.
funky
I was
words.
gonna. I have this. Here, let me do this.
Okay.
That was great, James. It was like you were a blind guy doing it. You had your eyes closed, and you're like,
I don't know why. Sometimes I just
Yeah. Well, you got it down.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah.
"All right, so here we go. Do we know what we're doing?"
Yeah. Should we do? Matt should be like, I'm Matt Squamish Matt Weinhold. I'm Sean Gibbous Sheridan. I can't think of the four.
I'm James Miskatonic Gonis.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
You got to give me one.
There's gibbous, squamish. I like the Miskatonic. What,
I had something here. Eldritch.
Yeah, which I don't even know what that means.
I don't either.
It's like ancient, arcane, kind of.
What does gibbous mean?
Well, gibbous is like a.
Don't we need an adjective? Don't we need an adjective? I mean,
hold on. I've got a thing I've got here called a sampling of Lovecraftian phrases.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get a good. There's some words.
James.
Whispered, gouged, hissed. These aren't that good.
And there's more adjectives, though.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think gibbous, eldritch, and squamish are great. We just need a fourth. But no, I think
what does
Miskatonic is.
I thought
Miskatonic works. Miskatonic.
No, eldritch is an adjective.
Is it?
Yes,
Okay.
I think. I mean, yeah. But either way, I think it works. Wait, let me look it up real quick.
James, I see it's 97 in Palm Springs.
It is literally 350 degrees today. That's what it is.
Okay, eldritch means weird and sinister or ghostly.
Okay.
I think that works.
Eldritch.
And
do you want me to do that one, or you give me one?
Yeah, it could work.
I'm Eldritch Larry Strothe.
Okay, this is 10 words H.P. Lovecraft used most. Well, hideous, nameless, abnormal.
No.
This is only 10.
There's got to be those funky words. I think you've got it.
Loathsome. Loathsome.
No,
I know, it's too normal.
Yeah.
That's why Squamish is a member of a Salish people of southwestern British Columbia. Is that the wrong thing? How do you spell it? Squamish.
I thought it was squamish.
Squamish, right? That's weird. For definition, squamish.
I am Providence, James GONIS.
No, I like James. I like your
aberrant.
Ooh,
abhorrent.
Icarus.
Well, Icarus.
It's a Greek myth.
Yeah, we can't use the Icarus.
Why?
Right, that's from Planet of the Apes. Oh, well, not from Planet of the Apes.
Different Icarus.
It's Greek mythology.
Yeah, Icarus is the guy who tried to fly.
Right.
No, Icarus. There's it's spelled Ichorous. Icarus.
But unfortunately, I think Miskatonic is better. It's more because Icarus still sounds just like Icarus from mythology.
I agree. You can still be gibbous, Matt. Did you want to be gibbous?
It's not that. We need one more.
No, it's gibbous, eldritch, squamish, Miskatonic.
Miskatonic.
It doesn't work because it's.
You don't like Miskatonic? So what?
Or we cannot do it at all. Or we cannot do this at all and just do the thing at the end that Matt wants to do.
Like being James Flushing GONIS. Woo!
Well, and we have been saying it up until this point, so it's like hitting it again and again.
Yeah.
So we could also do creatures, you know?
Yeah. Obviously Cthulhu.
Dagon and
Cthulhu. Matt should be Cthulhu.
Larry should be Larry the Outsider Strothe.
That's a story.
Isn't there a creature name that I can?
There's Yog-Sothoth. They all have names.
Like I'm Slogloth Larry Strothe.
Yeah, there's all the different deities.
We should be deities. Oh, now that makes sense.
That's right, because we're the elder gods, right?
Yeah, so we're all the elder Yog-Sothoth. How do you pronounce it?
So give us the four elder god names. Cthulhu.
Yog-Sothoth.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, look them up because I know there's a good number of them.
Zeus.
What?
Wait, what? Hey,
there's Azathoth.
Ooh, I like
Azathoth.
Azathoth.
Azathoth. Oh, what am I saying?
I like it.
Azathoth. So Azathoth.
I like that one.
Okay.
That's good. How do you spell the Yog one?
Cthulhu.
Yeah, Matt can be Cthulhu.
So we just need one more.
There's a deep one. There's
I want to be.
Deep one? Deep one?
I like the deep one. I'll be the deep one.
elder thing. We've done that already.
I'm Azathoth.
Where's Yog-Sothoth?
Yeah, is that how I pronounce Sothoth?
I believe so. Yes.
I'll be him.
Let me see.
Azathoth.
There's
Larry
a
Strauss.
Shoggoth.
Oh yeah,
That's
the
a
Sean.
I'm.
What about
Azathoth.
Dagon? Is that not an elder?
Dagon works. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
Dagon
fine.
works too.
Yog-Sothoth.
covered.
Yog. And so it's YOG-SOTHOTH. So
Okay, yeah, Yog-Sothoth. I'll be that one. I'll be Sean Yog-Sothoth Sheridan, if I can say
I
that.
like because it's got Yog in it. I like
Yeah,
that.
of course.
All right,
like-
so who's got what?
I've got Azathoth because not Larry Stroth, but Larry Stroth. So I like Azathoth, Larry Stroth. I like that.
Okay, and then James, you're going to be Dagon
I can be Dagon.
or the deep one. I like James, the deep one, Gonis.
I'll go with that.
Ooh.
That's pretty good, right?
Okay. Sure.
Oh, so maybe I should be Larry Azathoth Stroth. That's what I should be.
Yeah. That we should all put it in the middle of our name, right?
Gotcha.
So Matt Cthulhu Weinhold, Sean Yog-Sothoth Sheridan,
Larry Azathoth Stroth.
and
James the Deep One Gonis.
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Okay.
Cool.
All right,
do
let's
it.
try
Let's
it.
give it a shot.
If I
Let's
can
give it a
say
whirl.
this. Yeah.
Give her a son. And I'm going to say, explore the world of H.P. Lovecraft, minus the racism.
Yeah.
I like it.